Part 245. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2447. The book is too old and the subscription is incredibly low, but it is impossible to be a eunuch. Bulletin U will insist on writing the best book possible. I hope you can see my friends here. Even if you only spend a few dollars to subscribe to some chapters, it will be a support and affirmation of my efforts. Thank you. Yin Yang Sect. This is a sect that has only been around for less than 10 years. However, in just a few years, the Yin Yang Sect has made rapid progress. It is said that this is related to the combat power of their mysterious sect leader. What is even more exaggerated is that the sect leader's unique skill Yin Yang Dao can be spread to everyone in the section. Yes, the strong men who learn this fighting path explode in combat power one by one, and there is a high probability that they are stronger than others at the same level. The characteristics of the Yin Yang sect have caused them to be quite aggressive in this peaceful star field, which is quite different from the simple. Moreover, most of them are peasants and commoners who were born into poverty. Without understanding etiquette and rules, the entire Yin Yang sect is even more incompatible with its surroundings. There are often incidents of friction between Yin Yang sect members and outside forces. But what is surprising is that even though the Yin Yang sect has done so many things and the surrounding areas are extremely hostile to them, no force still dares to attack them. Naturally, they didn't dare to knock on the door, because the events that happened 5 or 6 years ago were still fresh in their minds. The leader of the Yin Yang sect, Yin Yang, once single-handedly defeated many powerful figures from the surrounding forces. In the end, he revealed his so-called true body, which completely silenced the surrounding forces. Moreover, they were a typical powerful force in the Peace Star territory. However, I was so frightened that I couldn't get over it for several years. For a moment, both sides seemed to have done nothing wrong. The outside world was no longer pressing on the Yin Yang section. The Yin Yang sect also seemed to have no past expansion and was operating the territory it had occupied during the previous expansion honestly. Everyone thinks that they expanded too quickly in the early stage and it takes time to digest. But no one knows, the real reason is because after the battles in the past few years, the sect leader Yin Yang has disappeared. Without the backbone of the Yin Yang sect, even though many people's combat effectiveness is pretty good, they still have time to develop. It's too short, and the strongest ones are far away from the galaxy level. If they don't huddle up and wait for the return of the sect master, how can they continue to go out and develop and be destroyed by others? Wow, that's Billy, the senior sister of our Yin Yang section. It is said that Billy once killed several star-level magic weapons with 1 against 3. Senior sister is so charming that people have even forgotten that senior sister is less than 100 years old. She is too young. No one really knows where she will go in the future. Look, the star level on the other side is the nominally strongest Lord Aopin among the 5 disciples of the section. Last time he gained military exploits in the border battle and was given a valuable treasure by the Lord Yin Yang. Today's combat effectiveness, there are rumors that it has reached the galaxy level. God bless our Yin Yang section. Even though we are surrounded by powerful enemies, we can still stand proudly in the peaceful star territory. It is all thanks to the support of these disciples and the old master of the Yin Yang section. I believe that if this continues, our Yin Yang sect will gradually become a better one. For a powerful behemoth. Don't forget that the equally mysterious guardians and deputy sect leaders around the sect master are also feared by the enemy with their fighting prowess. Exactly. Within the Yin Yang sect area, countless ordinary creatures are living a life of practicing hard, trying their best to redeem the treasures of the Yin Yang sect, and fighting for a place to enter the Yin Yang sect town zone treasure land. None of them knew that the seemingly extremely powerful Yin Yang sect, in addition to the sect leader and the 5 major disciples, also had so-called protectors and deputy sect masters. This sect with full foundation was actually not what they imagined. So powerful. Because all the backgrounds are basically the same person, their Lord Yin Yang. But the problem is that in the previous years, Yin Yang, that is, Jia Yan himself, had already left the Peace Star territory, and even ventured into the outside world. After many things, he had no time to care about the Yin-Yang sect. In other words, the Yin-Yang sect is in the Peace Star territory, and there are relatively few provocative forces. Otherwise, it may be enough to destroy the Yin-Yang sect several times in these years. It's just that they don't understand, and they still think that their own forces are invincible nearby, so they still act roughly. Many forces are bullied by their disciples, and they dare to get angry but dare not speak out. That is to say, today, several Yin-Yang sect disciples who were singled out by the public gathered in one place not without meaning. They were discussing whether to disturb the master's practice. In name, they knew a little bit about Jia Yan's departure, but at the same time, they also believed that Jia Yan might have returned. Because the coming and going of master is so strange. The reason for gathering together today is very simple, that is, after so many years, these disciples have accumulated a large number of problems that they do not understand and require Jia Yan to solve. If these problems were not answered by Jia Yan himself, others would not be able to answer them. It cannot be helped. But when they arrived at the main star of the Yin-Yang sect, they looked at the Yin-Yang sect's cultivation star tearing apart the subspace, and they were still a little disappointed after they couldn't feel the master's aura. Maybe the master has returned, but he just didn't release his aura? With our strength, it's impossible to sense the master's aura. It's possible, but it's best not to disturb his old man. No matter if he comes back or not, even if he comes back, since the master has not released his breath, it means that he is unwilling to communicate with others, so we should do what we should do. Yes, senior sister. Compared with the little girl Billy earlier, Billy, who now has a lot of power, is already a completely different person. She has experienced a sense of power for 5 or 6 years, and as she gets older, she begins to become more mature. Her little bunny ears no longer look like a tall bunny person, but have become bunny ears that stand tall. This is a rabbit person who means that he is an adult and has independent opinions. Although from the perspective of interstellar creatures, a creature that is not even 50 years old should be in the category of a child, this is not so obvious to Billy. She had often heard Master talking about her before. I have mentioned before that in Master's hometown, people in their 50s and 60s have long since become adults. 100 years old is the end of the lifespan of intelligent creatures, so Billy should no longer think of herself as a child. Precisely because the master said this, Billy listened very carefully, and gradually forced herself to become a more mature rabbit in her daily life, so now she is really mature. Today, this group of juniors came together to see her, the senior sister, and wanted to see their master. Similar things have happened several times in the past 5 or 6 years, so Billy did not hesitate and came with her juniors. Unfortunately, as usual, nothing was gained. Billy was not disappointed, but just a little depressed. She didn't know what was going on with her master. She said last time that she would only leave for a while, but she didn't know that she would be away for such a long time. When everyone thought that these disciples would return empty-handed and return to their jobs. Creak. Above the main star of the Yin-Yang star, at the top of the towering Yin-Yang peak, the small wooden house seemed to be suddenly pulled apart by an invisible hand. A creature that looked like an ordinary earthling, but with an old face, slender eyes that shone with wisdom, and a turtle shell on its back, slowly walked out of the wooden house step by step. Master! Master, Master! Master, you are really back. Great, Master is back. The 5 disciples who were waiting on the Yin-Yang peak stared completely at this moment, as if they didn't believe their own eyes. The 5 of them were like this, and the ordinary Yin-Yang sect disciples outside the Yin-Yang peak burst out with extremely excited exclamations. Master Yin-Yang? Master Yin-Yang is out of seclusion. Ha ha ha, sect master, you are well. Sir, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still so wise. That's great. I haven't seen the Yin-Yang sect master for many years. I thought the sect master was injured when he finally faced the 12 major galactic levels of the coalition. Jia Yan's face had a faint smile, and he was even more pleased when he saw several of his disciples appearing in front of him. Although this is just his clone, for Jia Yan, this is the person he looks like in the Yin-Yang sect, and everyone knows him like this. So he combined this identity with himself, and he had a full sense of identity. Billy, Biha, Ryan, Lankuo, Aopin, U5, I haven't seen you for a long time. It seems that your strength has also improved. I am very happy to be my teacher. Jia Yan smiled. In the past, he had a lot of so-called wisdom and a bit of pretentiousness, but now his strength has reached the level of a senior domain master who is invincible around here, and his knowledge has skyrocketed a lot, have systematically studied and understood many things, so this wisdom comes naturally from within. From now on, he can truly claim to be a wise and knowledgeable senior, otherwise he would have been questioned by Billy and other apprentices in the past. Master. Billy was originally a person who supported her senior sister, but when she saw Jia Yan's clone, her eyes turned red and she rushed over with tears in her eyes. She can fly herself, but Jia Yan can guarantee that if this little guy dares to hit the shield of Yin Yang Peak like this, a big bud will definitely be knocked out of her little rabbit-eared head, so he smiled. After the brainwave power moved slightly, the shield that originally protected Yin Yang Peak disappeared instantly. Billy flew into Yin Yang Peak, jumped to the ground, and then hugged Jia Yan. Master, Billy misses you so much. Okay, you are such a big man, why are you still acting like a child like a child? Billy is just a kid. Jia Yan smiled and looked at the cute disciple who was the most obedient and clingy, and then looked at the other 4 male disciples who were following behind and wanted to speak but didn't dare, and he became very angry. Look, if your senior sister has this attitude, what is your attitude? So, I should have accepted all female disciples as my master from the beginning. Each one of them is so loving and affectionate, how heartwarming it is. After being glared at by Jia Yan for a few times, the 4 disciples were all confused. First of all, it is impossible for them to hug Jia Yan like little bunny-eared Billy. Secondly, these 4 major creatures are actually stronger, and their bodies are normal strong creatures in the universe, unlike little Billy. Even though they are not very tall, for example, the strongest Yupin, his whole body is almost bigger than Yin Yang Peak, how can he jump up and hug him? So they are baffled. I've met Master. Finally, the most coquettish disciple let go of Jia Yan, and the 4 disciples behind him came to salute one by one. In the Yin-Yang sect, Jia Yan actually promoted many of his own opinions and universal values, such as respecting teachers and respecting Taoism, respecting elders, etc. In other words, many places copied Confucian concepts. Therefore, the disciples are well organized and respect their master as their father. This can be regarded as some selfish motives of Jia Yan. After all, although he established this force for certain interests at the time, he also did not want anyone in the force becoming a white-eyed wolf. Unexpectedly now, it has really become the basic human nature of the entire region. Well, please listen carefully. I have a friend who is outside the Yin-Yang sect area. After a while, follow me to greet this person. Jia Yan nodded and didn't say much else, let alone how the Yin-Yang sect was operating recently. There was no war in the Yin-Yang sect, he had known this for a long time, and if even a force without war could not operate well, these major disciples would not have to hang around, so he would simply remove them. After all, when he left, he had already written the rough template of the entire Yin-Yang section, even the most basic laws and so on were written by him himself, and he couldn't copy them well. Then these disciples really had no solution. Kick out the door so you don't embarrass yourself. Fortunately, nothing so embarrassing happened to Jia Yan, and the yin-yang sect was doing well. Master's friend. The major disciples were all slightly shocked. After such a long time, they still don't know how Jia Yan is doing in the outside world, and whether he has a great reputation, and this sudden arrival of Master's friend may be the time to solve this mystery. The friend that Jia Yan was referring to was, of course, the one who followed him to Leda outside the yin-yang section looking for books. As a galaxy-level Leda who can achieve a certain status in the entire Peace Star territory, Jia Yan decided to give him a new identity, that is, his friend, and welcome him well. Anyway, no one else understands Jia Yan's true identity. If the giant mosquito's true form is revealed, it will shock the entire yin-yang sect. So he might as well just show up as a turtle. Not long after, Leda was waiting outside the border of the yin-yang section. Finally, the lights inside the yin-yang sect were bright, and battleships and strong men flew out one by one to greet his powerful friend with a galaxy-level strength. Is this the yin-yang sect force that Lord Jia Yan created when he was living in the central star field of the Milky Way? It's quite impressive, and it's developing well. Leda sighed. Look at Mr. Jia Yan. When he was living abroad, he was not much stronger than himself, but he managed to achieve so many tricks. Text download address. Phone reading. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2448. As for Leda himself, he had been wandering around in the years after he left the Zerg Queen's power. Although he finally followed his own heart and entered the black hole area, if it hadn't been for Jia Yangxiang's help, he would have been there at that time. He will become a cheap thug for the forces in a certain black hole region, and he may serve for dozens, hundreds, or even a lifetime. Comparing people to each other is so irritating. How else can one be called a genius and the other a fool? Welcome Lord Rita. While Leda was still distracted and thinking about things, the people coming from the yin-yang sect area ahead had already arrived. Haha, thank you all. I came in a hurry and didn't prepare any gifts. Please don't blame me. Leda is also someone who is used to similar scenes. After all, if he thinks he is a fool, that is just what he thinks. Who in the universe can practice to the galaxy level is a real fool. So he coped pretty well. No need for gifts. It's good that you are willing to come. Please come with me. Jia Yan's clone smiled, and then led Leda into the yin-yang sect. It is rare for the yin-yang sect to have a friend of the sect leader, and he is also a galaxy-level powerhouse. It is said that he is still a galaxy-level person whose strength has not shrunk from the outside world, so the entire yin-yang sect seems to have set off an uproar, and Leda is extremely angry. Attention and curiosity. Since the two met as friends in some form, they had to do the whole drama. People from other forces may have witnessed the scene of the two of them walking together, but this is not something that cannot be explained. After all, it is true that the two parties are friends. So what if Jia Yan invites his friends to be guests in the yin-yang sect? Besides, who would care about such details? For the sect master's departure from seclusion and the grand visit of the sect master's friends, the entire yin-yang sect was filled with laughter and excitement every day. This yin-yang sect is really good. It is much larger than our Zerg Queen's current territory. Haha, Leda, you don't know this. When I came to this area, there was only one asteroid as my base. It was really difficult. Oh. This has made my subordinates very interested. I wonder if you can tell me something? I am all ears. During the greeting process, Jia Yan and Leda spoke respectfully on the surface, but privately they used the power of brain waves to communicate. What no one knew was that Leda was extremely respectful to Jia Yan. It's not like a term used between friends. After all, they are friends on the surface, but Leda still takes his status very seriously. He knows that he is just a subordinate of Jia Yan. Come on, Lord Leda, here is our yin-yang sect's specialty, the yin-yang sect's magic weapon. Come and taste it. Jia Yan faced Leda and entered the huge planet in the subspace. In fact, Jia Yan himself was shocked when he entered this planet of positive and negative forces that he had created. It has only been a few years, and the planet has changed a lot. Both the buildings and various plans have become more complete. It seems that in addition to their longer lifespans, the creatures in the central star field of the Milky Way are not low in work efficiency. Of course, this may also be the unique work efficiency of the people in the peaceful star field. After all, they have nothing else to do except work. Go for it. Magical weapon. Leda was a little surprised. Because of the magic weapon, although Jia Yan mentioned it to Leda once or twice, he never took it seriously. After all, Jia Yan did not provide any real evidence to show the effect of this so-called magic weapon. Now I really want to see the real thing, and it seems that it is not the kind of fake thing that is pretentious. Jia Yan followed his memory and entered outside the central building of a large city, then sighed. This building seems like nothing now. After all, the palace in his subspace is more than 10,000 kilometers long, and the planet he created is only a few hundred kilometers in diameter. Even the Edessa planet is not comparable. Apart from the positive and negative cultivation effects, other places really don't count. While Leda was waiting outside, Jia Yan entered the so-called magical weapon pavilion, and then found a so-called magical weapon that he had made in the past, which was an artifact that contained positive and negative power in one strike, and then flew out of the magical weapon pavilion. Show it to Rita. Boom. I saw an earth-shaking force strike out from the subspace. Not only Leda, but also everyone in the yin-yang sect were shocked. What a powerful force. Leda looked surprised. You know, he just stared at this so-called magic weapon and felt the power that Jia Yan instilled into the magic weapon. It was only a little bit, but it caused the magic weapon to explode with extremely terrifying two powers, one positive and one negative. There are rolling waves inside the subspace, as if the stormy waves are going to subvert the entire subspace. However, it is impossible for the subspace to be shattered by this power, but the momentum is really shocking. Is this the power of a magical weapon? No one has ever been able to use this magical weapon with such power. It turns out that the master himself uses it, and it is so terrifying. We must write down master's technique of borrowing the power of magic weapons just now. This may be our new direction. It's amazing. Even the attack just now reached the galaxy level. You must know that master didn't use too much of his own power. Such a powerful magical weapon, the last time I lent it out to deal with a wandering thief, it failed to produce such a terrifying effect. Several disciples had confusion written all over their faces. Compared with other people of the yin-yang sect, they are very familiar with this magical weapon. As a so-called magical weapon that Jia Yan personally trained when he stayed in the yin-yang sect, this piece of equipment is regarded as a treasure by them. Every time no enemy is too terrifying and will not be used easily. But in the past few years, they have used this secret treasure several times. Although they have completed the task every time, they have never developed this secret treasure to this extent. Haha, don't be surprised. This is just my understanding of yin and yang dao that has reached a relatively advanced level. If you work hard, you may reach this stage one day in the future. Jia Yan shook his head, looked at Leda, and then at the disciples behind him, expressing satisfaction with his own performance in using this secret magic weapon. He casually threw the magic weapon to the disciples behind him, and they quickly reached out to catch it. To everyone in the yin-yang sect, they regard it as a treasure, but to Jia Yan, it is of little use at all, because his body has already broken away from the level where he can use magic weapons to enhance himself, or he needs some kind of earth-shattering universe. Only if the secret treasure can reach the level that he can use it effectively today. As for Leda, he was surprised at first, but soon stopped being so shocked. Jia Yan's real body is a senior domain master, so where is the item with this little combat power? Even he may not be able to hurt it? He thought so, but the people of the Yin-Yang sect didn't think so. As beings under the Yin-Yang Dao system, they understood the benefits of this kind of item better. And after the blow just now, many senior officials present, they also felt the extremely profound principles of Yin and Yang Dao inside, and everyone fell into an extremely excited realization. They really wanted the secret treasure. Even if they only studied it for 10 days and a half, I'm afraid it would not be good for them. There will be extremely profound improvement in the Yin and Yang Dao. It's a pity that Jia Yan casually threw this magic weapon to his disciples without telling who it was for. He must still need to use the exchange system he established before to exchange for this item in the future. This is what should be done. Jia Yan will not let people get his research results casually without any reason. Moreover, things that are obtained without paying for it are often not cherished. Maybe the more restrictions are relaxed, the Yin-Yang sect will people's progress is slower. Sir, today's trip to the Yin-Yang sect has really opened my eyes. I didn't expect that the sect you created is so different. I thought that what you created should be an ordinary force. I didn't expect it. It's like this. Returning to a meeting place in the starry sky, Jia Yan and Leda entered a large area of black mist. This kind of black mist is commonly used in wars in the outside world, but in the Peace Star territory it has been turned into a high-end hotel that receives a large number of individual guests. There are really very few wars here. Many people don't even know that in the outside world, the black mist is used as a position for both sides. Actually, this force was created by me based on some ideas. Their own efforts are also responsible for reaching this point. Jia Yan spoke a little modestly, but between the lines, there was an extremely strong sense of pride. Leda and Jia Yan chatted some more about the future direction, and then the two parties said good night to each other and returned to their respective places of residence. Of course, a strong person does not need to rest or sleep, but it is polite to take a rest. Moreover, more importantly, Jia Yan needs to meet his apprentices and powerful leaders. After saying goodbye to Leda, Jia Yan met with several disciples. Together with the powerful men in charge of all aspects of the Yin-Yang sect, they met with Jia Yan. The things reported are very simple, that is, some events that happened in the Yin-Yang sect during the days when Jia Yan disappeared. It's not a big deal. Just like what Jia Yan saw on the way here, no force dares to take advantage of the Yin-Yang section. After all, the Yin-Yang sect stopped its external expansion 5 or 6 years ago. Everyone thinks that he will. Like other forces in the Peace Star territory, after gaining status, they will stop. So the things reported are all trivial and innocuous incidents. The leader of a certain force came to meet Jia Yan in person 3 years ago. A princess of a certain force wanted to form a relationship with a certain disciple, and so on. The Yin-Yang sect has engaged in several big businesses, such as so-and-so breaking through a small level. Jia Yan almost wanted to doze off after hearing this. After all, compared with the 5 or 6 years of a sect as big as the Yin-Yang sect, his own experience in these 5 or 6 years is the real rapid progress, and he has experienced countless various events. In comparison, the experiences of the Yin-Yang sect with such a large population in the past 5 or 6 years may not be as thrilling as his alone. It's boring. Huh? No, Billy, you said that the son of a powerful lord proposed to you? No, you are still so young, let's wait a few years before we talk. When Jia Yan heard some news, he was suddenly shocked, then shook his head and refused. Little Bunny Ears was surprised. Well, okay, master, I'm not getting married. I'm still young. I'm not even 40 years old. Little Rabbit felt like a child in front of Jia Yan. Several apprentices on the side looked at each other in confusion. Why did this master seem indifferent when he heard that a princess from another family came to marry a male apprentice, and even thought that an alliance could be formed through marriage? It's Billy's turn and she refuses? This is so unreasonable. It's not that Jia Yan doesn't think it's possible, he just feels that his own good things need to be digested by his own family. It's best for this little rabbit ear to get in touch with one of his apprentices. Yeah, that unicorn from before the little creature's talent is pretty good, slightly better than Billy's, so it's just fine with him. After thinking about it for a while, Jia Yan said that he had thought too much. When it comes to emotional issues, he himself is in a daze, so how can he think about his disciples? Anyway, he doesn't really want his disciples to become the wives of other forces. After all, there is a possibility that the weaknesses of the yin-yang sect will be spread, right? Let me feel your strength. If your yin-yang Dao strength has not improved much in so many years, I will be quite disappointed as a teacher. After Jia Yan said this, all the disciples felt their whole bodies tense. Then, not allowing them to refuse, Jia Yan used his yin and yang Dao, which is the power of positive and negative brain waves. Under the intrusion of this force that was still irresistible to the disciples even though it was a clone, the brain wave power of the 5 major disciples was involuntarily guided out, and even the yin and yang Dao talents in their bodies were revealed. This is one of the many techniques that Jia Yan can use after reaching the current level of strength. It was impossible for him to do this when he was in the Peace Star territory. Oh, this is quite interesting. After Jia Yan felt it for a while, he smiled slightly amidst the uneasiness of the 5 disciples. That turtle-like old face was filled with relief and a little surprise. After speaking, Jia Yan looked at the person among the 5 disciples who was not very optimistic about him. Aopin, I didn't expect that your strength has improved to this level. To be honest, your previous talent was not favored by me, but your performance today surprised me. Your efforts over the years should be more radical, right? The disciple Jia Yan was looking at was actually the 5th disciple who had never been favored by him. Even among the disciples, he was slightly rejected, but he was the oldest high-grade one. Ah! Several disciples looked at Aopin, who was praised first, in astonishment, with surprise written all over their faces. Text download address. Phone reading. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2449. Sorry, it's the 6th disciple. I almost forgot about Little Beast. Master, me. I am so virtuous and capable that I cannot bear your praise. Several senior sisters and brothers work much harder than me. Aopin was suddenly praised by Jia Yan, and his face turned red immediately. Then he was extremely excited and said that he didn't work hard enough. But Jia Yan smiled and shook his head. No, they don't understand your efforts, but how could my teacher not know? In the past few years, you probably rarely rest, right? Haha, the so-called stupid bird flies first. You did a good job. My teacher didn't expect you to be like this. We have come this far in a short period of time. Aopin's eyes were red and he almost cried. It doesn't matter to him that others don't know his efforts, but if the master doesn't know his efforts or even doesn't recognize him, it would be very heartbreaking. But the problem is, Jia Yan didn't do anything like that. He seemed to be aware of his efforts and could see them completely. On the one hand, this made Aopin feel more comfortable, and at the same time, it also made the people around him more in awe of Jia Yan's unfathomable depth. Even a disciple's efforts can be seen. What a terrifying ability this is. Jia Yan can naturally see it, and he can not only see the efforts of the most diligent disciple, but also the efforts of several other disciples. In fact, it is very simple to put it bluntly. From their yin and yang Dao, he can tell people the feeling, combined with their talents, can be calculated to a similar value. As for this Aopin, he was the least talented among the 6 major disciples. The reason why Jia Yan accepted him as his disciple was also very simple, that is, this disciple was originally strong enough. Another person with a similar level of effort as him is Lan Kuo, who has the advantage of subspace talent. It was precisely because he had subspace talent that Jia Yan accepted this disciple with average talent to see if he could train him. Come out with a little, Jia Yan. Looking at it now, Lan Kuo's level of self-effort is still sufficient. Not only does his level of cultivation in Yin and Yang Dao meet Jia Yan's inner requirements, but also in terms of subdimensional ability, there is a hint of Jia Yan's original appearance. Speaking of not working hard enough, Jia Yan looked at Billy on the side, and the little unicorn creature following Billy, who was still afraid of Jia Yan, that is, his sixth disciple Beast. He felt helpless for a while. These two are definitely the least hard-working, after all, they are still children. But the unicorn behind Billy is indeed the most talented among all his disciples. Even if he doesn't practice much at this time, he has already reached the high level of heaven level. You must know that when Jia Yan left the Peace Star territory, the little guy doesn't even have any strength. But none of them can compare to Xiao from Biostar. That little guy is the real genius. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recruited her as my apprentice when I was homeless. Jia Yan thought about it and realized that he had really recruited many disciples from everywhere in his life. But except for the 6 disciples in front of me, among the other disciples, only Xiao Xiao from Biostar is quite talented. Others are more than a little behind Xiao. The gap is as big as heaven and earth. Okay, you go back and have a good rest first. When you prepare the questions you want to answer for me tomorrow, I will answer them one by one for you. Thank you, Master. A group of disciples left together. Well, at least they respect themselves quite a bit, and since their talents are not too bad, it would be a good choice to let them help promote Onmyoji. Jia Yan has no intention of letting these 6 disciples, or all the other disciples except Xiao, reach the Domain Lord level. He can't even guarantee that they will reach the galaxy level, but these disciples can definitely help him. Onmyoji continues to flourish. As for Xiao Yuer, this little girl is what Jia Yan has high hopes for. She was born in the North Star. Even if she is just a creature from an ordinary family, the possibility of having the best talent there is too high, and it is very likely that she will be born there. Coincidentally, she was just right for her yin and yang path. In the future, if Xiao Yuer can advance to the Domain Lord level, or even become a senior Domain Lord with Jia Yan's current strength, Jia Yan will believe it, at least there is a chance. Of course, promotion to a territory lord sometimes does not depend on talent, but rather on mental ability and opportunity. So Jia Yan can't guarantee it, but it's a sure thing that Xiao Yuer can become a galaxy level. Well, I can't be too ambitious. How can a completely new direction of cultivation be successful so easily? These disciples are all the result of my hard work, but if I want them to produce many domain masters, and then lead them, it is impossible and unrealistic for the entire Yin and Yang Dao to flourish. I want to see the facts clearly. Jia Yan shook his head. He knew that a new direction of cultivation was not that simple. He never thought that one generation would be able to make Yin and Yang Dao a mainstream one. He just expected that in his possible long life in the future, such as 5,000 years, or 10,000 years later, Yin and Yang Dao can develop, then he might be able to see this grand scene in his lifetime, which would be enough for him to be proud of. Jia Yan laid out the path forward for his disciples, and took advantage of the night time to perfect some of the imperfections that Yin Yang Dao had made before. Especially when Jia Yan saw that some of the pits he had made in the Yin Yang sect were quite clever, that is, even though he did not understand some of the plans at the time or were difficult to answer, he cleverly passed them through. Or explain it in some specious way, which makes Jia Yan himself smile bitterly. I was really a bit ingenious at that time, but I was still pretty smart. I left problems that I couldn't solve for later, and I definitely didn't leave any mistakes behind. At that time, he may have thought that he could improve these problems in the future, so he left ambiguous remarks. It happened that many of his previous teachings were enough for him now. After all, a creature who was only at the mid-level of galaxy at that time was really nothing compared to him who is now a senior territory lord who has also been to the North Superstar and gained too much knowledge and principles. There were many things that he could not answer at the time. The problem seems to be pediatric today. Jia Yan solved a large number of problems casually. With his brains and energy at the level of a senior domain lord, solving these problems was simply child's play. Presumably the disciples and other senior officials in the Yin-Yang sect would be extremely surprised when they saw the scene the next day. Jia Yan is just accomplishing things that he has not done before, and some things that he thought were insignificant in the past have become quite important to him now. At least after being promoted to the domain lord level, Jia Yan's personal feelings have gained many things that did not exist before. In the past, he only wanted to improve himself. In his opinion, most things were almost all for self-service. Even the so-called establishment of forces and the recruitment of disciples, half of them had personal emotional factors, and the other half were completely out of interests at the time. But today, he knows that he is no longer that kind of person. Perhaps the improvement in strength allowed him to change himself and become a more emotional person. It may also be that he subconsciously believed that he was strong enough, and the emotional side that had been suppressed took the initiative again. In short, everything is as Jia Yan himself knows. Every strong man will gradually develop various personalities due to changes in his own strength and age. Perhaps Jia Yan is also experiencing a moment of personality change now. Master, the new textbook you revised has really enlightened me. There are many things in it that I couldn't understand before, but now I understand them. Thank you, Master. The next day, the first disciple who came to the door was the most diligent disciple whom he had praised yesterday, and he was also the disciple Aopin who was still the strongest one he had casually accepted. After Aopin returned to his residence yesterday, he had been unable to take a good rest, and then he flipped through the core disciple teaching materials placed on the Yin-Yang sect's internal network. He was shocked to find that these teaching materials had been altered. He originally thought that some powerful hacker from the outside had changed the teaching materials, but after a closer look, he found that this was not the case. The person who changed the teaching materials was actually their master, the only person with the authority to modify the teaching materials, Yin-Yang. After discovering this, Aopin read part of the textbook all night, and gained a lot. He came to Jia Yan early in the morning to express his thanks. Haha, being a teacher is just to explain things that were not explained clearly in the past. There will be similar changes in the future, so you should pay more attention to the changes in the teaching materials. Yes, the disciple will definitely observe it day and night. Jia Yan has no doubts about Aopin's level of effort, but it is a pity that his talent is not worthy of his efforts. Jia Yan has already seen that this disciple has improved a lot even in the level of Yin and Yang Dao. But in fact, his star-level strength changes very slowly. In other words, he may obtain stronger combat power at the same level through the Yin-Yang Dao, but the improvement of his own essential strength is extremely limited. In the future, he will not be promoted to the possibility of galaxy level is not that high. Sighing in his heart, Jia Yan asked Aopin to talk about something he didn't understand. After giving some pointers, he asked the happy disciple to leave. Since he cannot be directly promoted to the galaxy level, he must find a way to make him as powerful as possible under the current level of strength. After Aopin came, Lan Tuo also came as expected. He was also the one who saw a lot of changes in the teaching materials yesterday. After he came, Jia Yan smiled and pointed out some questions to him, and then continued to wait. Unexpectedly, after waiting for a long time, no one came. Jia Yan was helpless again. He knew that among the remaining disciples, no one would come, which meant that they did not notice the changes in yesterday's teaching materials at all. Although this did not mean that they would not practice hard, but in the first 5 or 6 years of practicing yin and yang dao, in those days, if they don't read the teaching materials when practicing, it means their attitude is definitely not enough. It's okay for Billy and Beast. They are just children, and their talents are actually quite good. They are more likely to grow in the future, but Billy and Ryan make me quite speechless. It is natural for children not to like to study, and they have poor self-control, so Jia Yan is not so strict with Bai Li and Xiao Xiao. However, compared to Harian, their 2 apprentices are already adults, and their talents and strength are not strong. Actually dare not work hard, which is obviously quite disappointing for Jia Yan. Bihar was originally a farmer, and Ryan was the leader of a low-income group, or a gangster force. Both of them were tainted with too much utilitarianism and local flavor. Although they have become big shots for many years, they have this point. I have never been able to change it. It is difficult to change a person's essence, not even Jia Yan can do it. In other words, the future of these 2 guys is not very promising. Well, I don't have much to say. The 9 sons of Longsheng are still mentally retarded. How can I guarantee that every disciple I teach has extraordinary abilities? As long as there are no traitors among them, I am very satisfied. Jia Yan has nothing to be disappointed about, and nothing to feel unhappy about. With his current territory lord level, although he has become more emotional than before, Jia Yan vaguely feels that he is more vaguely isolated than when he was operating in the Peace Star territory. The feeling of being outside of earthly matters, although it is more emotional, is also like being from a high place, overlooking everything in the world. This is the mentality of the domain lord. A territory lord may seem to be just different in name, but in fact, their mentality is often significantly different from that of an ordinary galaxy level. There is no cloud in the world. Master Jia Yan, I searched something on your yin-yang sex network yesterday and found that you are really different. The more I read about this yin-yang sect, the more refreshing I find it. What you teach is more than I imagined. Even more peculiar. After the disciples left, Leda appeared. As a subordinate, he naturally regards himself as a subordinate in a deserted place. Jia Yan is not easy to correct, but deep down in his heart, Leda is still a kind of friend. Haha, you are overthinking. When I set up my forces here, I just wanted to collect some resources. To be able to do this now can only be said to be a coincidence. Jia Yan was non-committal and just to shirk his role. No matter how much he shirks it, the actual results are here. Of course Leighton knows what Jia Yan's ability is. Okay Leda, get ready. After staying in the yin-yang sect for a while, we will continue to set off. This time, I will take you to my hometown. Hometown. When Leda heard this, he immediately became energetic. You know, he is quite interested in a planet that can cultivate terrifying creatures like Jia Yan. What kind of severe environment would it take for such a starry sky beast to appear? Leda is looking forward to it. But he didn't wait to ask more questions. Jia Yan's communicator suddenly rang. Text download address. Phone reading. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2450. Master, I don't know why, but several forces suddenly made rude demands on us. One of the forces said that we should be disbanded on the spot. Jia Yan was startled. No, what is this? During the many years since I left, nothing happened to the yin-yang section, but as soon as I came back, something happened. And there are still outside forces calling for the yin-yang sect to be disbanded? What a loud tone. Don't they know how big the current yin-yang sect is? This is a livelihood issue involving thousands or even hundreds of millions of people. You just want to disband? You are not ashamed of your words. Aopin, don't worry. I happen to be a master in the power, So you respond directly and say that it is absolutely impossible to comply with their wishes. You have to decide how strong your words are. Jia Yan knows that this kind of friction with the surrounding forces cannot be solved simply by being tough. After all, he is the one who is leaving this starry sky. If he is blindly tough, he may lay the seeds of trouble after he leaves. If it really can't be negotiated, then it's not a big problem. Is a problem that can be solved with force still a problem? Sir, what is going on? Leda was right in front of Jia Yan. Listening to Jia Yan's words, he seemed to hear something and asked with some doubts. It's nothing, it's just that our departure time has to be delayed a little. Of course, it won't be too long. Yeah, I believe it too. Leda doesn't feel worried about Jia Yan having any problems here. Jia Yan, who even walked out of the black hole area in that way, what trouble will he get into here? He firmly did not believe it. When he reaches Jia Yan's level of strength, he is no longer at a level where he will run into trouble in any area. Unless he is too desperate, otherwise, just by virtue of his status as a senior domain master with subspace talent, he can almost walking sideways in the Milky Way. Oh, this almost area does not include the places where the big forces are located in the central star field of the Milky Way, as well as the black hole area, plus the 4 giant stars. In areas other than the above areas, if he is allowed to roam freely, it is almost impossible to encounter problems. Even if there are any problems, it will be nothing more than a trivial matter. A person who is strong enough can make people feel safe. On the second day, Jia Yan Lida was not too nervous, but the 6 disciples were extremely nervous. They arrived outside Jia Yan's Yin Yang Peak, waiting for Jia Yan to leave the seclusion. In fact, Jia Yan's clone came back from the subspace just now, and he was always with Leda. But on the surface, it looks like he is practicing in Yin Yang Peak. Master, those forces are really coming in force this time. Master, please give me your instructions on what we should do. Bupin is the most urgent one. The other 5 disciples behind him were different from him. Some were anxious and some were not so anxious, but none of them were as good as Aopin. Why is it so urgent? The reason is also very simple. Among the major disciples, he is the strongest on the surface, so over the years, he has been receiving strong people, even the galaxy level, several times. Precisely because he knew more about strong men, in the past few years, he had gradually learned about the deeds of his master, Yin Yang, who made his fortune in the Yin Yang sect. After this period of understanding, he figured it out a little bit. That is his master, who seems very mysterious, but his strength is about that of a mid-level galactic, and the strongest will not exceed the peak of the mid-level galactic. Because if you are a strong person at the Domain Lord level, you will not start from a small agricultural star in this starry sky. Even if Yin Yang has any special interests, after determining the development route, you will not start from a small agricultural star. The association struggled for a long time at the beginning, testing the reactions of many outside forces, and then slowly developed and expanded. Ever since, he calculated Jia Yan's general strength at that time through his development and deeds in the land of Yin Yang sect. That's why we're in such a hurry now. Because there are threats coming, but there are domain lords as backers. These forces are all the top forces in the entire Peace Star territory. In other words, it is very likely that the people behind these forces are the territory lords behind them. This might be a matter of life and death, so how could he not be anxious? Don't panic, tell me carefully, what are these forces going crazy about? Jia Yan stepped forward with a smile, and spoke slowly and slowly, making several disciples, especially Aopin, suddenly calm down. That's right, no matter what, they have their master supporting them in front of them. If the sky falls, they will have their master to escape. Even if they are escaping for their lives, I am afraid that their master, who has the talent of subspace, can take them with him. Run away? These disciples are not strong enough and do not understand the territory lord they have never seen in their lives. If they know that the territory lord is not such a simple existence, even if a subspace strongman at the peak of the mid-level galaxy wants to show up in front of a territory lord, escape is not that simple, and it may not be so calm. Master, it's like this. The news about your return to our forces the day before yesterday spread. Those forces didn't know why, but they suddenly got ready to take action. Then yesterday, several of them sent these written letters, asking for something. There are all, but the most extreme one is the strongest force in the entire Peace Star territory, which says it wants our force to disband. Aopin took out the email he had received earlier and showed it to Jia Yan. After Jia Yan looked at it, his heart moved slightly, as if he remembered something. Leda, I think this matter may have something to do with you. Jia Yan raised his head towards the starry sky and said this inexplicably. Right, a senpai. What the hell, is Leda senpai here? It has something to do with Senior Leda. Could it be that Senior Leda is a traitor? Several disciples raised their heads as if they had seen a ghost, and then belatedly discovered that there was a creature above their planet, stepping out of the subspace faintly. It was Leda. You know, Leda is already strong, and he has recently received the help of Jia Yan's subspace ability. He can simply move in the subspace and hide it from the current disciples who are not even at the galaxy level. Isn't it just a matter of words? My dear friends, please don't misunderstand me. I'm definitely not a mole. Your Excellency Jia Yan, you can't let the juniors misunderstand me. Tell me the truth. Leda smiled bitterly and quickly complained to Jia Yan. Is he a mole? How can it be? He had just come to this Peace Star territory with Jia Yan. Before coming here, he didn't even know what the Peace Star territory looked like. How could it be him? Besides, as someone who knows Jia Yan's true identity and strength, why would he go to cooperate with the Domain Lord outside the peaceful Star territory without having such a big thigh? He's almost stupid. Jia Yan naturally believed in Leda, but when he saw that his disciples were doubtful about Leda, it was quite interesting, and his explanation voice was a step slower. Then, he said slowly and leisurely, haha, you don't have to worry so much about Mr. Lai. He is a very good friend of my teacher. He can't be a spy, but there is still a great possibility that this matter has something to do with you. Jia Yan looked at Leda, which made Leda a little confused. What do you mean by this? Your Excellency Jia Yan, my arrival has caused such a change in your power. If you don't explain it clearly, I will feel uneasy. Leda said strangely. It's very simple. You all know that our Yin-Yang sect has not launched a war for many years, but the surrounding forces have never relaxed their vigilance against us. During the previous war, the outside domain lords seemed to want to extend their hands to the Peace Star territory. They came inside just because I stopped fighting, so they had no legitimate reason, but today is different. Leda, as a galaxy-level powerhouse from the outside world, you were led into our yin-yang section, of course we know it. You are just a guest, but what do you think of the forces that have been guarding our yin-yang sect? You know, our yin-yang sect had previously been assisted by galaxy-level powerhouses who were suspected of being outside, and killed more than a dozen. The leader of the power has a history of killing. After Jia Yan said this, everyone suddenly became enlightened. When they looked at Leda again, although several disciples felt relieved, they still felt that he came at the wrong time and was very offensive. Leda had no choice but to look at his nose and heart, only to feel that he was taking the blame. It seemed that he did not come here subjectively, and he just followed Master Jia Yan back to the sect, right? But the words cannot be explained, otherwise the drama will be in vain. Oh, Your Excellency Jia Yan, since this matter is related to me, I cannot escape responsibility. So, if there is any problem, I will advance and retreat together with your section. Leda said seemingly very boldly. Senior Leda. Behind him, Those simple disciples of Jia Yan were completely moved. You know, this matter involves disbanding their sect, and there will definitely be strong forces and powerful men showing up, but Senior Leda did not abandon his responsibility, but bluntly stated that he and the Yin-Yang sect would cooperate with each other. What a good relationship and a responsible person to say such words. Jia Yan gave the righteous Leda a speechless look. This guy is also quite a thief. He knew that with Jia Yan around, there would be no problem with this matter. That's why he became so grand. Otherwise, Leda would be a little timid. With Xian's character, I'm afraid he would be the first one to want to escape. Thank you Lord Leda for your help. I will inform you if anything happens. But superficial words still have to be said, and after Leda's words, the disciples were less panicked. At least on the surface, there was a strong person, so they would be less unfounded. At the same time, outside the Peace Star territory, two extremely terrifying and powerful creatures slowly wandered into the Peace Star territory. Haha, I haven't entered the Peace Star territory for many years. I didn't expect that such a barren place would have such a developed industry and people's livelihood. The economy is no worse than the ordinary star territory outside. If we hadn't understood this, it is precisely because of its uniqueness that star territory can develop like this, so it must have come back to cause trouble a long time ago, right? A strong man looked around with emotion. Another person agreed with his words and nodded, yes, the territory lord creatures around us have made a lot of profits in the Peace Star territory over the years. Originally, we would not let the Peace Star territory, no matter how turbulent it is, there is actually a force that is unwilling to hand over materials to us. In this case, we should really relax, otherwise other new forces born here may follow the same example. These two great creatures turned out to be two territory lords. This is also normal. You must know that the Peace Star territory can develop normally, and such a weak strength is not coveted and annexed by stronger external forces. In fact, it is not the reason why the Peace Star territory is unattractive, but because there are people behind the Peace Star territory. The factors that caused the several domain lords around to restrain each other and prevent outside forces from entering. For thousands of years, the Peace Star territory has always been protected to some extent by the external domain lord forces. So when a force appeared in the Peace Star territory and refused to pay tribute to them from the outside world, and refused to hand over the force's unique specialty Yin-Yang sect magical artifact, this made them very unhappy. It's just that in the past few years, the Yin-Yang sect, which has seen the development of these major forces, has not used force externally, and its attitude towards paying tribute has always been hesitant. There was a hint of willingness, so they held back. But in the past 2 days, they heard that this force had once again found a galaxy-level person from the outside world, and now they couldn't help it. Not communicating with the outside world is the limit of several major domain lord forces, because one force can remotely communicate with the galaxy-level powerhouses from the outside world, and this galaxy-level powerhouse has a high probability of belonging to a certain domain lord force. It may not matter for a while, but every force is in contact with remote forces. Wouldn't the influence of the major domain lord forces around them be greatly weakened? So this is the reason why they went to war this time and directly dispatched the two domain lords. I heard that the leader of the Yin-Yang sect is a strong man from the outside world, and the positive and negative forces of the Yin-Yang sect are also from his own hands. Is this existence possible? A little tricky. No way, after all, he is just a star. Didn't we all see the post-war traces of the last time he fought alone against more than a dozen galaxy-level alliance powerhouses? It's not something to be afraid of at all. That's right, no matter how talented he is, but his actual strength is insufficient, he is just letting us take whatever we ask for. It's just a pity that such a talented person dies in our hands. If possible, let him come under our influence if we conduct research and try to squeeze out his so-called yin and yang dao, there may be a possibility for us to take a further step in the way of territory lord. Very good, actually I think so too, haha, it just so happens that the other guys don't want to do such a small thing personally. If we catch this yin and yang, only the two of us can digest the harvest. The two domain master creatures exchanged their harvests while flying. They had never thought about what kind of enemy they would encounter in this peaceful star field. Text download address. Phone reading. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2451. The two domain master creatures probably never felt that the yin-yang sect did not listen to their warning. Even outside the star domain, there were several seemingly lonely figures waiting for them in the starry sky with golden swords and broad horses. Hey, the area ahead is indeed where the yin-yang sect is located, right? Yes, I cultivated several forces in this starry sky, but they seem to be destroyed by the yin-yang sect, but in the universe, the flight speed of the two domain masters is extremely fast. Even if they are huge in size, they are still extremely small existences if left in the universe. In addition, these two domain masters used relatively advanced stealth technology and techniques to hide their eyes from others along the way. It can be said that they did not let many people pass by along the way. The forces knew of their coming. This is because many creatures in the Peace Star territory have no idea that their starry sky has been invaded to such a serious extent by outside forces. If they know that the paradise they think is actually in accordance with the requirements of powerful outside forces, if you act in the same direction, I'm afraid it will cause panic. Of course, several leaders of large forces who knew about this matter had received their notice, so many powerful people had already arranged receptions along the way, and some technological machinery had already prepared videos nearby. Broadcast and report back as soon as possible what may happen here. When the two domain masters arrived together, they happened to find Jiayan, Yuze, who flew out from the yin-yang sect and came to the border area, and several of his disciples, plus Leda who came with him. The Jiayan mentioned here is not his true body, but his clone. So the two territory lords who arrived here for the first time only felt it was funny. But I didn't expect that this person from the yin-yang sect would be so funny. Did he go out to greet him in person? Among these creatures, there is one that is quite interesting. Look, that turtle-like creature looks like a star at first glance, but if you take a closer look, it feels like a galaxy. It's even still a little weird. It should be the so-called yin and yang, and it is indeed an existence that can defeat more than a dozen galaxy-level alliances. But he picked the wrong target. Thinking that by defeating the dozen or so galaxy-class alliances in the Peace Star territory, he can fight against the domain lords from the outside world. He is so naive that it makes people helpless. The presence of the two territory lords was quite interesting, as if they were looking at their juniors, looking at the creatures waiting for them in the starry sky. So far, the opponent seems to have not noticed their arrival. You must know that the two domain master creatures are tens of kilometers in size. They have sensed the people of the yin-yang sect first, but the people of the yin-yang sect, the fact that they haven't been able to see each other yet shows that the gap between them is unimaginable. But just as the two domain masters were savoring the people of the yin-yang sect, the turtle yin-yang outside the yin-yang sect seemed to be aware of it. Haha, are there two guys of this level here? It's interesting. He was talking to himself, saying such puzzling words, and then looked at the disciples and Leda around him. Be prepared, people will be here soon. After Jiayan finished speaking, he felt Leda look at him strangely, then nodded and increased his strength. But the apprentices were weird. Because they have not seen any biological signs, they are not as good as Leda, who know Jiayan's true strength, and they do not know that for strong people, the biological traces that can be sensed in the universe are relatively far away. They also think that if you can't see anything with your eyesight, Master shouldn't be able to see it either. But out of complete trust in Yin Yang himself, they also made preparations. Of course, they knew that their combat power would not play much role, and they were all conducting command on technological equipment, such as setting up some traps. Jia Yan had long received information about the forces that were preparing to take action against the Yin-Yang section. He said that people would come to the Yin-Yang sect from this direction in the next 2 days to solve the problem of the Yin-Yang sect's disobedience, so he invited Leda and others to come here. Waiting. It's just that he really didn't expect that a mere Peace Star territory could invite 2 major domain masters. Originally, he thought that even if the domain masters behind the Peace Star territory took action, one of them would definitely come. But he didn't expect that as soon as he came, 2 major domain lords came. It's really interesting, because Jia Yan hasn't thought that he can still find this kind of fun at the edge of the central star field of the Milky Way. Interesting. Yes, in Jia Yan's mind, this incident can only be described as interesting. Even Leda, who had just been stunned for a moment, was slightly startled after raising his power now, sensing the 2 earth-shattering powers in the distance. Then Leda also looked at the Jia Yan clone beside him and felt that the 2 powerful men coming were very ridiculous. It's like delivering food. The 2 domain lords, who are not good at other business, just came to the Yin-Yang sect to give away their heads. I hope these 2 creatures will behave better later, otherwise Master Jia Yan will feel a little uncomfortable and kill them on the spot. It would be a bit embarrassing to kill. Leda, one of these 2 domain lords, is quite interesting. Maybe he is too old. He has reached the upper limit of his age. His combat power has weakened to a rather inferior level. If we fight later, you enter the subspace and use the method I teach you with my antimatter and antimatter to hum him. Hum him. Who does it? I. Who do I do? Become a domain lord. How could I possibly defeat a domain lord? When Jia Yan said the above words, he originally thought that he would be able to keep quiet this time. He was waiting to see Lord Jia Yan defeat Leda, the 2 domain lords, with his real body. His eyes widened and he almost lost his own. They all stared out of their eyes. What the hell? Lord Jia Yan, did you say something wrong, asking me to deal with the domain lord? Even if the territory lord loses strength again, it is impossible for a strong person at the beginning of the galaxy to be able to deal with it. When you were promoted to the peak of the intermediate level of the galaxy, you were also a strong subspace talent, all under the control of a territory lord. The chase is full of dangers, and today, you want me, a primary level existence of the galaxy, to deal with another territory lord? Mr. Jia Yan, you really think too much. For the first time, Leda's mind was filled with lightning and thunder, and countless of the above thoughts flashed through his mind. He even doubted the world, thought it was a dream, and questioned whether Jia Yan had any conspiracy to frame him. But then I thought about it, it's not necessary. Why would a dignified and experienced territory lord frame him as a junior member of the galaxy? Wouldn't it be easier to just slap him to death? It shouldn't be. Master Jia Yan treats me so well, why do I still doubt him? It's totally treasonous. Leda wanted to slap her mouth. Lord Jia Yan, can I beat the territory lord? After thinking for a long time, the figure over there was getting closer and closer, and even several major disciples screamed when they saw it. Only then did Leda hesitantly ask Jia Yan. Oh, you're asking me now? I thought you didn't ask. Jia Yan looked at him with a half-smile. The communication between the 2 parties was entirely on the galaxy-level channel, and no one around the disciples could hear it. Don't worry, I'm just letting you give it a try. Don't you have subspace abilities? Besides, that guy is really weak. According to me, he doesn't even have the fighting power that Black Sheep had when he was first promoted. Back then, I was in the galaxy. When you were at the top of the ladder, didn't you even fight the Black Sheep? And don't forget, I'm not asking you to fight, but I'm asking you to use the positive and negative items I made. This thing is called in the yin-yang section, it's a magic weapon, and it's my trial work some time ago. If it works well, you don't have to fight, it can have the combat power of a galaxy-level person on its own. Do you understand what I mean now? Ah. The magical weapon, the yin-yang sex magical weapon, are there any such powerful ones? Leda was shocked. It turned out that Jia Yan's intention was not to let him face a domain lord alone, but to let him fight with the domain lord with the magical weapon Jia Yan had recently made. And if that guy's combat power is not comparable to that of the black sheep who was just promoted to territory lord, then is he an ordinary mid-level galaxy peak? Or is it a weaker half-domain master? Leda's heart was flashing with all kinds of thoughts, and with these messy thoughts, he quietly released a trace of brainwave power, and looked into the subspace. Through his subspace ability, he could see from a distance, subspace. At the depth of 6 or 7 layers of space, there was actually a huge structure tens of thousands of kilometers in size. He suddenly lost all fear. Lord Jia Yan is here in person, is he afraid? Afraid of ghosts? A senior domain lord, and a subspace domain lord who can even give intermediate domain lords headaches. If he can't be saved, he won't be as famous as before. My friends, the enemy ahead has arrived. Your Excellency Yin Yang, I suggest you ask the children to step back and let us deal with these two enemies together. Leda actually learned how to show off and asked Jia Yan to order his disciples to back off. Haha, Lord Leda said, you all should move back. There might be a big battle soon. Jia Yan smiled and said to the several disciples behind him, as well as the several junior subordinates of the galaxy that the Yin-Yang sect had gathered now. Yes. Those large galaxy-level beings were just the powerful ones from those forces that Jia Yan had previously destroyed, or those who had defected to the Yin-Yang sect in recent years after hearing about its name and benefits. At this time, they sensed the coming from a distance. The two powerful forces were so terrifying that they couldn't wait to get away. One or two of them let out a sigh of relief and retreated violently back. As for Jia Yan's disciples, they looked hesitantly at the creatures that were getting closer and closer in the distance, and their faces were getting paler due to their size. Then they had no choice but to listen to their master's orders and retreated as well. They knew that a battle of this level was definitely not something they could get involved in. They couldn't bear the mere presence of the two terrifying and huge creatures, let alone fight them. Your Excellency Yin Yang, this is probably the first time your disciples have seen this kind of existence since they were born. Don't be frightened. The friend played by Leda is quite good. After all, his relationship with Jia Yan has become more and more equal recently. Although Leda still regards Jia Yan as a subordinate under ordinary circumstances, it is difficult to he plays a friend, and he can also do relatively good acting. Jia Yan looked at him, then smiled. That's right, Billy, Biha, you guys should watch carefully, Master, what is the real strong person in the outside world? It's time for you to see the real strong person. The conversation between the two people did not use brainwave power anymore, but they spoke normally. Of course, this is also the way of conversation with brainwave power, otherwise there would be no sound transmitted in the vacuum of the universe. So the group of people behind them all heard their conversation. The real strong man. From the outside world? What kind of strong man is he? The disciples, including the galaxy-level ones behind them who escaped very quickly, had seen strong men before, but those were all strong men in the peaceful star territory. I am afraid he had never thought that he would still be able to do so in this life. Can meet the legendary territory lord. But while Jia Yan and the others were talking happily, the two creatures at the end of the starry sky were like lightning-fast meteors, approaching quickly. These disciples and the powerful warriors at the beginning of the galaxy suddenly understood the meaning of the words. What does it mean to be truly strong? It's right in front of you. Jia Yan didn't even need to explain these two coming creatures. He didn't even need to say a word. They all knew clearly that the two of them were definitely not the terrifying existences that could be found in the peaceful star territory. The size of the two creatures was far greater than any powerful creature they had ever seen before. They were each more than 50 kilometers apart. Even Lord Leda, who was about 30 kilometers away, looked like a baby compared to the other. An order of magnitude worse. What's even more terrifying is that the energy fluctuations on their bodies seem to have a kind of magic power, which makes those who look at them feel dizzy involuntarily, as if they have seen some gods, which makes people worship them. Domain owner. This is the existence of the legendary territory lord. A strong man at the beginning of the galaxy is at this time, the scalp was numb, and it was extremely difficult to tell everyone present's inner judgment of the strength of the two coming creatures. In fact, other people had similar speculations after sensing this overwhelming power, but no one could say it out loud, because if they were to say it out loud, it would make themselves and others extremely desperate. If they are strong people in the Peace Star territory, even the strongest mid-level peak power players in the galaxy, they are confident that their own yin-yang sect master can deal with it. But the enemy has been replaced by a domain lord. And there are two domain owners. It is impossible to fight against the enemy. In the last battle 5 or 6 years ago, the sect leader single-handedly killed the joint efforts of the 12 primary level galaxies. Although they did not see the battle scene at that time, countless evidence afterwards showed that the sect leader Your Excellency also spent some effort at that time. At least it was not the territory lord's terrifying strength that could kill the primary level of the galaxy with just one thought. In other words, even their sect masters would turn into babies and be killed directly after facing the presence of the territory lord. Text download address. Phone reading. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2452. As for the sect leader, is that Lord Leda, whose strength is definitely not something that other galaxy-level people in the yin-yang sect can deal with. Although this gentleman is very high-spirited, his strength has been seen through. It is impossible to deal with even a mid-level star. So, it's dead. The people in the yin-yang sect were completely chilled by the current situation and felt that death was imminent. Domain Lord. This is the god in the hearts of all living things in the entire galaxy. Even in the central star field of the galaxy, he has almost the same status. A high-level creature from the galaxy? That is a legend, even rarer than a myth. As for the existence of the galaxy summit, it has not been heard of in the past 1,000 years. It is even more illusory and illusory, not even comparable to that of gods. Of course, this is just a metaphor. Except for people on Earth, no one understands the concept of fairy. Master, master. What level of strong man is this? Although his teeth were chattering, as the strongest being among his disciples, he still forced himself to speak. After finishing speaking, among the two powerful men with their backs to them, Yin Yang looked back at the disciple calmly. Jia Yan's clone smiled. You have already guessed what level of power there is, so why don't you want to admit it? He turned back again, his expression extremely indifferent, as if what he saw in front of him was not some terrifying territory lord, but two ordinary strong men whose strength was almost different from his own. In life and doing things, sometimes it is very necessary to recognize the reality clearly. However, certain things do not need to be too worrying or too desperate. As the saying goes, there must be a road before the car reaches the mountain. If you really feel that there is no way. Jia Yan was leisurely, facing the coming terrifying energy of the two domain lords, not retreating but advancing, smiling. If there is really no way out, don't worry, my teacher is still here. Puff. The next moment, the old turtle clone, which was originally the size of an ordinary human, suddenly expanded in size. From a turtle creature the size of an ordinary human, it exploded in size in an instant. The two domain lords had already arrived in front of Jia Yan and Leda. When they saw this weak actually playing a game of enhanced strength in front of them and others, they immediately stood still and watched Jia Yan's performance with great interest. Jia Yan's clone gradually expanded from the size of a human on Earth, and grew in size all the way. It seemed to be an amazing change, but in the end it only reached about 10 kilometers, and then it was finalized, without any trace of it. Increase. Not to mention comparing the two 50-kilometer sized domain lord creatures, even comparing the 30-kilometer large Leda behind him, the difference is several orders of magnitude, and it looks very weak at all. Hee. A territory lord chuckled softly. This change was not beyond his expectation at all. After all, the level gap was so exaggerated that they could all see the details of this clone from a distance. Of course, today's Jia Yan is no longer able to see through the clone, and they still think that the clone is an independent creature. Keep changing. I heard that the master of the Yin-Yang sect is a wonderful person. Now I see that he is really interesting and can make people laugh. Another territory lord shook his head. To be honest, he was a little disappointed. It was widely rumored in the outside world that Yin-Yang was so weird and his actions were so profound. But now, at a glance, he was showing off his transformation in front of the two territory lords. Ability. What the hell is this? Isn't it just compressing the density of one's body? Races with slightly similar talents can do it. So when these two domain masters saw this so-called yin and yang playing such a little trick in front of them, they felt dumbfounded. Although they did not have such physical talent, playing such tricks in front of them was like two people playing tricks on each other. Doing some juggling in front of the boss is really speechless. Oh! Your Excellencies, have you ever heard of me? Originally, the two domain lords thought that after Jia Yan did such a little trick, his true colors would be revealed, such as begging for mercy or something, but Jia Yan's answer made them really angry and laughed. In front of the two territory lords, you call yourself my lord, but why don't you call them seniors and address them as your two excellencies? God, both of them were almost going crazy. They really wanted to arrest this little guy who was not like the elementary level of the galaxy and the star level was not like the star level and ask them what the reason was. How dare he be so confident with his mere strength? It really makes people laugh. Yin Yang. Since you call us this, you must be ready to put your status on the same level as us, right? I wonder if you know our strength. A territory lord shook his head angrily and said angrily. Of course, the two domain masters came to our yin-yang sect as guests, and the Bazong became prosperous. Jia Yan nodded. After speaking, the mentality of the two domain masters changed somewhat. Now that he knows that they are domain masters, and still has this state of mind, it shows that Jia Yan is really not afraid of them, but why? Just rely on the strength shown in front of you. It's simply not possible. But if not, then where does his confidence come from? The person behind him looks very strong, but is he actually just a primary level creature from the galaxy? The two domain lord clones looked at Leda and found that this guy was the same. His strength was quite transparent, not even as ethereal as yin-yang's strength. In other words, this yin-yang sect's backup existence is probably just an ordinary galaxy junior. What exactly is that? Gave yin and yang confidence. That's all, yin-yang, we are not here to play a game of courage with you. We are not here today to bully the small. As long as you voluntarily disband your yin-yang sect and keep the property looted within the sect, in addition, make a few copies of your yin-yang dao for us to study, and then we will let you go, otherwise you may not be able to leave this peaceful star field today, and the yin-yang sect will also be expelled. Impossible. A domain lord who came here showed his superior attitude as a strong man. He just finished stating the condition slowly. Unexpectedly, before he finished speaking, Jia Yan started to retaliate with every word. Impossible. The two territory lords were shocked and felt incredible. They looked at the old creature that was only 10 kilometers away in front of them, and one of their arms was bigger than him. They thought they heard wrong. Yin Yang. Do you really understand what we are? Two friends, territory lords, there is no need to say more. If you two come to my Yin Yang sect as guests today, I will treat you as guests. But if you two come here to deal with my Yin Yang sect, you can't say it. Today if I have to fight with you, I don't know if you two can have the strength of a domain lord. The two territory lords really felt that the world had changed. It was as if the person standing in front of him was a territory lord who was stronger than them. This Yin Yang was actually more aggressive than them. What does it mean to say you can't do anything? What does it mean to have the strength of a domain lord? Yin Yang. Have you stayed in the Peace Star territory for a long time and forgotten that we are not the weaker ones at the same level in the Peace Star territory? We are domain masters from the outside world. The territory lord who asked Jia Yan at the beginning felt that he had to decide the winner with Jia Yan in terms of language. Otherwise, even if he killed this kind of iron baby, Yin and Yang would not understand the gap between the two sides. It would be so fun. It will be much less. No need to say more. You two, let's do it. Come on, this friend who is speaking, since you said you are domain lords from outside, I will personally see the methods of you outside domain lords. Mr. Leda, another domain lord, how about I leave it to you, my friend? Jia Yanyi pointed angrily at the territory lord who just spoke to him. No. What a trick. What the hell? It's completely different from what you thought. The two domain lords were in a state of chaos. They originally thought that when their two domain lords came in person, this so-called Yin Yang, who looked a little weird, would definitely no longer play tricks on people, but would immediately show his true colors. In the presence of their two domain lords, he would kneel down and cry bitterly, and then it's only right to beg the two domain masters for forgiveness. But what is this? Force the two major domains that don't really want to take action to take action. Oh my God, is there such a tough-headed boy in the world? To die? Humph. Since you are so ignorant, let us see what you can do. But there is no need for both of us to do it together. I will. You dare. The territory lord pointed out by Jia Yan, who was the stronger of the two territory lords, was cold as ice and ready to stand up and kill Jia Yan's clone and Leda alone, but he didn't even say half a word. The 10-kilometer-long turtle seemed to be more impatient than him, and had already slapped him. He was so angry that he hit the slap in the face with just one blow. Puff. Boom 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 boom. Above the starry sky, a shocking sound like an explosion of stars flashed in an instant. One or two of the creatures around him flew away involuntarily. The weaker ones among them were even pushed around by this force, with blood spurting out of their mouths. Unfortunately, among the members were Billy and Little Beast, two of the major disciples. They were the two weakest. Seeing the aftermath of the territory lords' battle for the first time made their scalps stand on end, and they couldn't bear it at all. This kind of fighting force between the two sides arises. But those who couldn't bear the fighting force could not fight the surrounding spectators. Inside the fighting circle, a huge figure of 10 kilometers flew backwards during this confrontation. Is this all you can do? The so-called mysterious yin and yang. Don't you want to fight with the master of the domain? If you can't even block a single blow, how can you fight with us? Behind this figure, an extremely huge body of 50 kilometers suddenly rushed out in pursuit. It was faster than the turtle creature flying upside down, and it was about to catch up with the flying figure fiercely. Buzz. A crack opened in the subspace, and a moment later, the turtle's body entered the subspace, and although the pursuing figure came out with one blow, it missed the target. But the fluctuations in the subspace were also affected by this blow. There was only a sound of bones breaking inside, and it was probably that the turtle's shell was shattered. Grown-ups. Leda was on one side, and was not too affected by the aftermath of the battle just now. After all, the previous attack probably did not make any real move on the opposite territory lord. Hearing that Jia Yan's clones were injured, he suddenly became stressed. But looking at the other territory lord in front of him who was eager to try, although Leda felt a little timid, he still held back his nervousness. For the first time in his life, he called out to a territory lord. "My friend, since your excellency Yin Yang asked me to take action, I will only offend you, so please be merciful." The old territory lord who watched the battle felt eager to try, thinking that he could take down Yin and Yang as soon as he took action. After hearing this, he finally couldn't help turning his head and look squarely at this ordinary Galaxy Prime who had been ignored by them. Order exists. He just felt, what on earth is going on in this world? Forget about being a psychopath of Yin Yang. Judging from the blow just now, although Yin Yang was greatly defeated, it is true that he escaped the pursuit of a territory lord. In other words, even if Yin Yang looks a bit weak and his body is so it's small, and it's weird and aggressive, but no matter what, Yin Yang is really powerful. But what's going on with the Galaxy beginner behind him? Is he also here to challenge? Yin Yang monster, do you make weird friends? He is also looking for death? What two idiots! This territory lord really didn't know what to say. He always felt confused and was forced to fight with two such weaklings. The purpose of their coming was to threaten Yin Yang. If he could leave on his own, forget it. If they don't leave, then kill them casually. But when they first arrived, they didn't have time to be aggressive, and the other party became aggressive first. And there is a guy who is at the beginning of the galaxy next to Yin Yang, who is as stupid as Yin Yang. Sir, I advise you not to, This old territory lord has lived long enough and has long lost interest in fighting and killing. He is thinking about being more Buddhist and telling Leda a few words of truth, and then does not take action, and will solve Yin and Yang later. This little guy must have let them round and flatten him. But he didn't expect that before he could say anything, the trembling and somewhat frightened junior warrior of the galaxy would move his arm, and the brainwave power would emerge, and he would be bombarded with brainwave power. He kept a curse word in his heart and almost choked himself to death. Damn it, you're asking for death. The old territory lord couldn't bear it anymore. He just moved his eyes and shot away Leda's brainwave power attack. Then he was about to chase the creature in front of him who dared to attack a domain master, but he saw Leda retreat nervously, and his whole body instantly entered the torn subspace. Huh? It's also a creature with subspace talent? Damn it! No wonder you are so arrogant, thinking that subspace talent can fight across levels. Get out of here. The old territory lord almost laughed out of anger. Although the subspace talent is one of the extremely difficult talents, this does not mean that even a primary level existence of the galaxy with subspace talent can deal with the domain lord. If it can really surpass so many levels, the strong subspace talent will have already reversed the situation. Is it okay? In fact, even though subspace talents are tricky, they are not at all heaven-defying. There are too many ways to deal with them. Text download address. Phone reading. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2453. As for the sect leader, is that Lord Leda, whose strength is definitely not something that other galaxy-level people in the Yin-Yang sect can deal with. Although this gentleman is very high-spirited, his strength has been seen through. It is impossible to deal with even a mid-level star. So, it's dead. The people in the Yin-Yang sect were completely chilled by the current situation and felt that death was imminent. Domain Lord. This is the God in the hearts of all living things in the entire galaxy. Even in the central star field of the galaxy, he has almost the same status. A high-level creature from the galaxy? That is a legend, even rarer than a myth. As for the existence of the galaxy summit, it has not been heard of in the past 1,000 years. It is even more illusory and illusory, not even comparable to that of gods. Of course, this is just a metaphor. Except for people on Earth, no one understands the concept of fairy. Master, master. What level of strong man is this? Although his teeth were chattering, as the strongest being among his disciples, he still forced himself to speak. After finishing speaking, among the two powerful men with their backs to them, Yin Yang looked back at the disciple calmly. Jia Yan's clone smiled. You have already guessed what level of power there is, so why don't you want to admit it? He turned back again, his expression extremely indifferent, as if what he saw in front of him was not some terrifying territory lord, but two ordinary strong men whose strength was almost different from his own. In life and doing things, sometimes it is very necessary to recognize the reality clearly. However, certain things do not need to be too worrying or too desperate. As the saying goes, there must be a road before the car reaches the mountain. If you really feel that there is no way. Jia Yan was leisurely, facing the coming terrifying energy of the two domain lords, not retreating but advancing, smiling. If there is really no way out, don't worry, my teacher is still here. Puff. The next moment, the old turtle clone, which was originally the size of an ordinary human, suddenly expanded in size. From a turtle creature the size of an ordinary human, it exploded in size in an instant. The two domain lords had already arrived in front of Jia Yan and Leda. When they saw this weak actually playing a game of enhanced strength in front of them and others, they immediately stood still and watched Jia Yan's performance with great interest. Jia Yan's clone gradually expanded from the size of a human on Earth, and grew in size all the way. It seemed to be an amazing change, but in the end it only reached about 10 kilometers, and then it was finalized, without any trace of it. Increase. Not to mention comparing the two 50-kilometer sized domain lord creatures, even comparing the 30-kilometer large Leda behind him, the difference is several orders of magnitude, and it looks very weak at all. Hee. A territory lord chuckled softly. This change was not beyond his expectation at all. After all, the level gap was so exaggerated that they could all see the details of this clone from a distance. Of course, today's Jia Yan is no longer able to see through the clone, and they still think that the clone is an independent creature. Keep changing. I heard that the master of the Yin-Yang sect is a wonderful man. Now I see that he is really interesting and can make people laugh. Another territory lord shook his head. To be honest, he was a little disappointed. It was widely rumored in the outside world that Yin Yang was so weird and his actions were so profound. But now, at a glance, he was showing off his transformation in front of the two territory lords. Ability. What the hell is this? Isn't it just compressing the density of one's body? Races with slightly similar talents can do it. So when these two domain masters saw this so-called yin and yang playing such a little trick in front of them, they felt dumbfounded. Although they did not have such physical talent, playing such tricks in front of them was like two people playing tricks on each other. Doing some juggling in front of the boss is really speechless. Oh! Your Excellencies, have you ever heard of me? Originally, the two domain lords thought that after Jia Yan did such a little trick, his true colors would be revealed, such as begging for mercy or something, but Jia Yan's answer made them really angry and laughed. In front of the two territory lords, you call yourself my lord, but why don't you call them seniors and address them as your two excellencies? God, both of them were almost going crazy. They really wanted to arrest this little guy who was not like the elementary level of the galaxy and the star level was not like the star level and ask them what the reason was. How dare he be so confident with his mere strength? It really makes people laugh. Yin Yang. Since you call us this, you must be ready to put your status on the same level as us, right? I wonder if you know our strength. A territory lord shook his head angrily and said angrily. Of course, the two domain masters came to our yin-yang sect as guests, and the Bazong became prosperous. Jia Yan nodded. After speaking, the mentality of the two domain masters changed somewhat. Now that he knows that they are domain masters, and still has this state of mind, it shows that Jia Yan is really not afraid of them, but why? Just rely on the strength shown in front of you. It's simply not possible. But if not, then where does his confidence come from? The person behind him looks very strong, but is he actually just a primary level creature from the galaxy? The two domain lord clones looked at Leda and found that this guy was the same. His strength was quite transparent, not even as ethereal as yin-yang's strength. In other words, this yin-yang sect's backup existence is probably just an ordinary galaxy junior. What exactly is that? Gave yin and yang confidence. That's all, yin-yang, we are not here to play a game of courage with you. We are not here today to bully the small. As long as you voluntarily disband your yin-yang sect and keep the property looted within the sect, in addition, make a few copies of your yin-yang dao for us to study, and then we will let you go, otherwise you may not be able to leave this peaceful star field today, and the yin-yang sect will also be expelled. Impossible. A domain lord who came here showed his superior attitude as a strong man. He just finished stating the condition slowly. Unexpectedly, before he finished speaking, Jia Yan started to retaliate with every word. Impossible. The two territory lords were shocked and felt incredible. They looked at the old creature that was only 10 kilometers away in front of them, and one of their arms was bigger than him. They thought they heard wrong. Yin Yang. Do you really understand what we are? Two friends, territory lords, there is no need to say more. If you two come to my yin-yang sect as guests today, I will treat you as guests. But if you two come here to deal with my yin-yang sect, you can't say it. Today if I have to fight with you, I don't know if you two can have the strength of a domain lord. The two territory lords really felt that the world had changed. It was as if the person standing in front of him was a territory lord who was stronger than them. This yin-yang was actually more aggressive than them. What does it mean to say you can't do anything? What does it mean to have the strength of a domain lord? Yin-yang. Have you stayed in the Peace Star territory for a long time and forgotten that we are not the weaker ones at the same level in the Peace Star territory? We are domain masters from the outside world. The territory lord who asked Jia Yan at the beginning felt that he had to decide the winner with Jia Yan in terms of language. Otherwise, even if he killed this kind of iron baby, yin and yang would not understand the gap between the two sides. It would be so fun. It will be much less. No need to say more. You two, let's do it. Come on, this friend who is speaking, since you said you are domain lords from outside, I will personally see the methods of you outside domain lords. Mr. Leda, another domain lord, how about I leave it to you, my friend? Jia Yanyi pointed angrily at the territory lord who just spoke to him. No. What a trick. What the hell? It's completely different from what you thought. The two domain lords were in a state of chaos. They originally thought that when their two domain lords came in person, this so-called yin-yang, who looked a little weird, would definitely no longer play tricks on people, but would immediately show his true colors. In the presence of their two domain lords, he would kneel down and cry bitterly, and then it's only right to beg the two domain masters for forgiveness. But what does this mean? Force the two major domains that don't really want to take action to take action. Oh my God, is there such a tough-headed boy in the world? To die? Humph. Since you are so ignorant, let us see what you can do. But there is no need for both of us to do it together. I will. You dare. The territory lord pointed out by Jia Yan, who was the stronger of the two territory lords, was cold as ice and prepared to stand up and kill Jia Yan's clone and Leda alone, but he didn't even say half a word. The 10-kilometer-long turtle seemed to be more impatient than him, and had already slapped him. He was so angry that he hit the slap in the face with just one blow. Puff. Boom 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 boom. Above the starry sky, a shocking sound like an explosion of stars flashed in an instant. One or two of the creatures around him flew away involuntarily. The weaker ones among them were even pushed around by this force, with blood spurting out of their mouths. Unfortunately, among the members were Billy and Little Beast, two of the major disciples. They were the two weakest. Seeing the aftermath of the Territory Lord's battle for the first time made their scalps stand on end, and they couldn't bear it at all. This kind of fighting force between the two sides arises. But those who couldn't bear the fighting force could not fight the surrounding spectators. Inside the fighting circle, a huge figure of 10 kilometers flew backwards during this confrontation. Is this all you can do? The so-called mysterious yin and yang. Don't you want to fight with the master of the domain? If you can't even block a single blow, how can you fight with us? Behind this figure, an extremely huge body of 50 kilometers suddenly rushed out in pursuit. It was faster than the turtle creature flying upside down, and it was about to catch up with the flying figure fiercely. Buzz. A crack opened in the subspace, and a moment later, the turtle's body entered the subspace, and although the pursuing figure came out with one blow, it missed the target. But the fluctuations in the subspace were also affected by this blow. There was only a sound of bones breaking inside, and it was probably that the turtle's shell was shattered. Grown-ups. Leda was on one side and was not too affected by the aftermath of the battle just now. After all, the previous attack probably did not make any real move on the opposite Territory Lord. Hearing that Jia Yan's clones were injured, he suddenly became more stressed. But looking at the other Territory Lord in front of him who was eager to try, although Leda felt a little timid, he still held back his nervousness. For the first time in his life, he called out to a Territory Lord. "My friend, since Your Excellency Yin Yang asked me to take action, I will only offend you, so please be merciful." The old Territory Lord who watched the battle felt eager to try, thinking that he could take down Yin and Yang as soon as he took action. After hearing this, he finally couldn't help turning his head and look squarely at this ordinary Galaxy Prime who had been ignored by them. Order exists. He just felt, what on earth is going on in this world? Forget about being a psychopath of Yin Yang. Judging from the blow just now, although Yin Yang was greatly defeated, it is true that he escaped the pursuit of a Territory Lord. In other words, even if Yin Yang looks a bit weak and his body is so it's small, and it's weird and aggressive, but no matter what, Yin Yang is really powerful. But what's going on with the Galaxy beginner behind him? Is he also here to challenge? Yin Yang monster, do you make weird friends? He is also looking for death? What two idiots! This Territory Lord really didn't know what to say. He always felt confused and was forced to fight with two such weaklings. The purpose of their coming was to threaten Yin Yang. If he could leave on his own, forget it. If they don't leave, then kill them casually. But when they first arrived, they didn't have time to be aggressive, and the other party became aggressive first. And there is a guy who is at the beginning of the galaxy next to Yin Yang, who is as stupid as Yin Yang. Sir, I advise you not to, This old Territory Lord has lived long enough and has long lost interest in fighting and killing. He is thinking about being more Buddhist and telling Leda a few words of truth, and then does not take action, and will solve Yin and Yang later. This little guy must have been allowed to be rounded and flattened by them. But he didn't expect that before he could say anything, the trembling and somewhat frightened junior warrior of the galaxy would move his arm, and the brainwave power would emerge, and he would be bombarded with brainwave power. He kept a curse word in his heart and almost choked himself to death. Damn it, you're asking for death. The old territory lord couldn't bear it anymore. He just moved his eyes and shot away Leta's brainwave power attack. Then he was about to chase the creature in front of him who dared to attack a domain master, but he saw Leta retreat nervously, and his whole body instantly entered the torn subspace. Huh? It's also a creature with subspace talent? Damn it! No wonder you are so arrogant, thinking that subspace talent can fight across levels. Get out of here. The old territory lord almost laughed out of anger. Although the subspace talent is one of the extremely difficult talents, this does not mean that even a primary level existence of the galaxy with subspace talent can deal with the domain lord. If it can really surpass so many levels, the strong subspace talent will have already reversed the situation. Is it okay? In fact, even though subspace talents are tricky, they are not at all heaven-defying. There are too many ways to deal with them. Set a small goal first, such as remembering in 1 second, Shikiju mobile version reading website. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2454. Death, death, death. Leta rushed into the subspace and felt his body explode with adrenaline. The excitement made him so nervous that his whole body trembled. After all, the person in front of him was not an ordinary strong man, but a territory lord. Thinking back on it, he was so excited that his whole body shook into chaff. This was the territory lord. Once upon a time, every time the dream turned 1,000 times, he was dreaming that one day he might reach the same strength as the territory lord and fight against a territory lord whose face could not be seen clearly. Now, the dream has come true. But the problem is, this dream came a little too early. With such little strength, he started to fight head-on with the territory lord. Although Lord Jiayan said he was weak, he is also a territory lord, right? Oh my god, why did I promise Master Jiayan so easily? What the hell? Thinking about it carefully, Leta wanted to slap himself. Boom. Leta was just thinking this in his heart. A galaxy-level powerhouse has extremely strong thought ability. A lot of thoughts flashed through him in an instant. However, in such a short period of time, there was an extremely terrifying attack energy behind him, which bombarded him. Beside the body. Subspace ability is an ability, but this ability does not mean that even the domain lord cannot hurt him. Moreover, Leta has just entered the subspace, and his body has only reached a relatively shallow place. For the strong domain lord, this level of subspace can only have a concealing effect at best, and cannot make its attack power how much weakened. Fortunately, Leta has already acquired a lot of subspace skills from Jiayan. Although he had never experienced actual combat and had no idea what the deep meanings of those techniques were, he still listened to Jiayan's advice and suddenly changed direction when he entered the subdimensional space. And such a change of direction caused a shockwave for the domain master from the outside attack, causing him to lose his accuracy in an instant. Whew! The attack power of Leta's domain lord level made Leta's scalp numb. So that's it? Master Jiayan said that when I face a powerful enemy, it's best to change direction as soon as I enter the secondary space. This is because the enemy behind me is likely to attack me at the same time, and I have a slight chance of entering the secondary space. If it blocks the opponent's sight, their attacks will lose their accuracy. Leta suddenly understood the profound meaning of Jiayan's technique. After realizing it, Leta felt ecstasy in her heart. Really crazy ecstasy. Because he realized that this was not an attack from a simple ordinary enemy creature, but an attack from a territory lord. You know, this is the area lord. A month or two ago, he only looked up to the territory lord. He never thought that in just 1 or 2 months, he would be able to use the subspace ability taught by Lord Jiayan to avoid the attack of a territory lord. Attacked? Just by dodging this, he can brag about it for the rest of his life. But the problem is, the next thing is still not over. If he knows what he can do next, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as bragging for a lifetime. If you want to brag, just brag for 10 lifetimes. Boom. The old domain lord in the outside world obviously did not expect that the elementary subspace talent of the galaxy would be so difficult to deal with. His face darkened, and then his brainwave power predicted Leta's next movement direction, and he used it again brazenly. Brainwave power attack. For creatures with subspace talents, generally strong people use brainwave power to attack, which is more reliable, because it is difficult to control the direction with other energy. Humph, that blow just now must have been good luck. I'll judge your direction this time and see where you escape to. Although the old territory lord escaped a blow from Leta, he still did not use his full strength because he was already very old. If he used up all his energy, he might be killed on the way back. The domain lord friend next to him was attacked. Don't think that the territory lord really has any friends. To be called a friend, he has to be able to deal with the other territory lord with some strength, otherwise it is impossible for the two of them to get together. Therefore, he will not use all his strength to deal with a galaxy beginner, even a galaxy beginner with subspace talent who requires a little effort. But the old territory lord sent out the next blow, and his mood that was determined to win suddenly changed again. The reason is that inside the subspace, the primary creature of the subspace galaxy violated his calculations and suddenly stepped back. You must know that moving in the subspace is relatively difficult. Even for a strong person with subspace talent, it is a waste of physical energy. However, this junior galactic expert with subspace talents did not hesitate to waste a lot of energy and retreated violently. However, this move made his plan fail again. Leta was inside the subspace, looking at the energy of the territory lord passing in front of him, feeling scared and excited at the same time. You know, even one hit from such an attack will kill or cripple him. But the problem is, according to the evasion skills taught by Master Jia Yan, he really dodged these two attacks. No matter how terrifying the power is, if it can't hit you, it's just in vain. So Leta was both nervous and a little excited. Haha, I dodged again. These two blows were not accidents, but all the combat skills taught by Master Jia Yan were effective. This is the territory lord. Leta's expression was about to explode with excitement. However, he also remembered that Jia Yan once said that even if he had the subspace ability, it would be more difficult to fight someone who was stronger than one level, not to mention that no matter how weak the current territory lord was, he could still fight. It's more than enough to outpower him by 2.5 levels. This level of subspace ability is simply not enough to bridge the gap between the two sides. Sure enough, while Leta was excited, there was another earth-shaking energy in the subspace outside behind him that once again attacked him. The territory lord was already a little angry. Can this guy still escape? I won't hesitate to use more energy this time, but I will kill him in one breath. The old territory lord's face can no longer be wiped off. As a territory lord, he can't even kill the strong men at the beginning of the galaxy. He will definitely be ridiculed and ridiculed by other territory lords. The bigger problem is that he may be looked down upon by other territory lords, and then come to fight for rights in his territory. This may be the tragedy of his old age. Therefore, he is bound to win this blow. Leta in the subspace felt that the pores all over her body were standing on end and she felt uncomfortable all over. This is the feeling of being locked by terrifying energy. Even if he tries his best, he can't escape. Here we come. I've known for a long time that it's impossible to fight against a domain lord level being, but... Madness bloomed on Leta's face. How could a strong man not have the slightest bit of ruthlessness? Even though Leta felt in the past that he was not a crazy creature, in fact, Leta is not lacking in bloodiness. After all, he is a strong man at the beginning of the galaxy. He followed the Queen of the Zerg all the way through life and death, and then fought against the Milky Way of the Central Star Territory. For him, as long as there is a triggering scene, his bloody nature will be awakened. Moreover, the two attempts to evade the attack power of the powerful Domain Lord gave Leda considerable self-confidence. Recently, he has been affected by high-end battles, and the feeling of cowardice has disappeared, turning into ferocity and fighting spirit. He knew he couldn't resist the blow, but his brainwave power flashed. In the subspace, a certain item that had been prepared for a long time was finally activated. This is exactly the yin-yang magic weapon that Jia Yan told Leda. Moreover, Jia Yan recently researched it along the way. It can be said that among all the magic weapons of Yin and Yang Dao, it is the most terrifying existence. As long as this magical weapon really has practical significance, maybe the Yin-Yang sect in the future will finally become a different sect because of the appearance of such a magical weapon, or even the existence of this magical weapon. And change all the cultivation rules. The strong are the strong. Even if you use external means, it is difficult to cross the gap between the strong. This is the law. In the current universe, this law is difficult to break. But what if there is some kind of item that can be mass-produced by the outside world, allowing strong people to fight across levels? Even though the higher the level of such items, the more difficult they are to make, and many of them are even disposable appliances. But as long as they appear, the entire system dominated by the strong may be crumbling. The world of the strong in the future will be transformed because of this kind of item. Is coming, and a lot of variables appear. Today is the first time this kind of item officially appears in the world. At this moment, far away in the extremely deep interior of the subspace, at least in the 8-dimensional subspace, a huge palace building and a planet with a diameter of 1,000 kilometers that seemed very small next to the palace existed faintly here. If the creatures in the outside world could see these two items, they would no longer have the will to fight, because it is too terrifying. Even a domain master would understand that such items can exist in the deep levels of subspace. A powerful one has come to this place. But the 8-dimensional subspace, plus the fact that there is a terrifying subspace powerhouse in these two objects, is maintaining the invisibility state of the two giant objects, resulting in the situation here being invisible to the outside world, even the domain masters. Leda did a good job. Oh, is he ready to use that thing? Haha, just let me see the effect. Jia Yan's true form is a 50-kilometer-long giant mosquito, silently entrenched in the center of the huge palace, with an inexplicable brilliance shining in his compound eyes. The outside world cannot see here, but here he can easily observe the outside world, and even if he is willing, he can easily use the energy of his true body to rewrite the battle situation in the outside world. And this ability is also the reason why Leda has the courage to fight to the death. Who would be afraid when there is a powerful person watching over safety issues? Groan. While Jia Yan was silently observing the changes in the shallow layers of the subspace, changes were also taking place on the battlefield elsewhere. This is the place where Jia Yan's clone, which everyone considers yin-yang, fights against another stronger territory lord. The battle between the two sides was much more gunpowder than Leda's. After all, Jia Yan's clone yin-yang had made the domain master lose face from the very beginning. After the opponent struck twice, he had already used all his strength. Sure enough, he is a terrifying and strange strong man, with combat power that is just like a star level, but also like a galaxy level. In any case, it does not exceed the energy of the primary level of the galaxy. He actually avoided so many attacks from me with the help of subspace. Outside the subspace, a domain master flew around in the normal starry sky at extremely fast speeds. While flying, he threw energy into the subspace, causing a large area of chaos in the subspace. But even such an attack could not affect the size of the figure in the subspace. In the subspace, the 10-kilometer-long figure does not seem to be huge. Compared with the domain master creature, it is like a tiny baby. However, under his attack, the speed is not that fast, but he was very flexible in dodging here and there, escaping from attacks again and again in the cracks of energy. The domain lords outside were a little impressed by his flexibility. He didn't seem to be that strong, but his keen energy perception and ability to control the battle were simply the best. He felt that he was not dealing with a weak person, but a strong person whose fighting vision far exceeds his own. Of course he didn't know, but he was right about that. This dexterous yin-yang was simply a being much stronger than him. If he really knew this, he might not dare to come this time. Puff. However, the gap in strength was still huge. The domain master's energy soon almost hit Jia Yan's clone. And when the energy almost hit, a meteorite block flew out of the subspace inexplicably, and suddenly shot up. It was not much slower than the attack speed of the powerful domain lord, and it came directly from the domain lord's attack. The energy collided in one place. Boom. After both were annihilated, the territory lord was surprised to find that his attack was gone. But Yin Yang's figure was still unscathed. For this attack, he really used his true anger. Unlike the old immortal next to him, he was still in his prime, so he didn't save his energy much, but this kind of almost is it that the territory lord is using all his strength to fight, but he still can't do anything about yin and yang? Instantly, the territory lord suddenly felt that something was wrong with this trip. In the system of the strong, inexplicable things never appear. In other words, in the two battlefields in front of you, two weak creatures who can compete with the domain lord suddenly appeared. This cannot be an accident or a miracle. There's definitely something wrong. What's going on? This domain owner was keenly aware of the problem. But it was too late. When the territory lord became solemn, on the other side of the battlefield, the old territory lord who had always had the active advantage suddenly became stunned after an energy bombardment came out. In the subspace, the junior strongman from the galaxy who had been in such a state of embarrassment and seemed to be almost killed by him actually took out an artifact from somewhere using the power of his brainwaves to control it. This instrument looks like a big hammer, made entirely of metal. Its appearance is rough and crude, but it exudes a strange sense of oppression everywhere. Set a small goal first, such as remembering in 1 second, Shikiju mobile version reading website. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2455. But to the strong, metal is nothing. But the problem is, as soon as this huge hammer appeared, it seemed to be carrying explosive power. Suddenly, it exploded and blocked the old domain lord's killing blow. The expression of the old territory lord really changed, and became extremely ugly. What is this? The fact that he is old shows that he has gained a lot of knowledge in his life. Even if his fighting ability is gone, he is extremely rich in knowledge and experience. He also felt something was wrong in an instant. The huge metal hammer feels rough, but the appearance of the hammer is vivid. It is about 30 kilometers in size, which is as big as Leta's body. You must know that the weight of such a huge metal can be said to be exaggerated. But the point is not here. The point is that even if it is an item made of metal, under the energy attack of a strong person, it is destined to be smashed into pieces in one blow. After all, for the strong domain lord, the attack breaking a planet is nothing, so how can such a large piece of metal resist the attack of the powerful domain lord? But the problem is, it really blocks it? The face of the old domain lord who was chasing Leta changed wildly again, and this time the wild change was the most exaggerated in history. After all, the creature with ordinary galaxy-level senses in front of him had repeatedly dodged his fatal attacks, and even used such a thing at the critical moment when he was almost hit by him. What's this? The old creature felt the hairs all over his body stand on end. At this time, he had already recalled that when the two of them came, the two strange and powerful men of the yin-yang sect were not afraid of them at all. Now that this kind of item is used again, all the weirdness has been verified. The reason is very simple. Is it because they have the means to deal with the territory lord? Boom. When Leda used the so-called magic weapon given by Jia Yan, his whole expression became ferocious. What kind of power is this? Master Jia Yan has actually developed such a thing. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I feel that my strength has greatly increased after using this equipment. He grabbed the hammer-shaped object, and his whole body was filled with strength. In fact, this is because Leda has never learned Onmyoto. If he had learned Onmyoto, he would know the feeling of this kind of power. In fact, it is not just an ordinary power. On the hammer head of this hammer-shaped magic weapon, there are two forces, positive and negative, which are constantly attacking each other in the body of the hammer. Moreover, it is not an ordinary positive and negative object. It is the kind of weapon that is constantly destroying itself. It accumulates over time. The collision has already accumulated full positive and negative power, so once it is used, it will be like an explosion, and terrifying power will be borrowed. Because it has been on the road of self-destruction, this magic weapon has extremely amazing requirements for the manufacturing process and material of the item. Jia Yan still searched for certain minerals from the northern superstar to find usable ingredients and added them to the tool. And this is how the current hammer was born. In other words, it is incredibly valuable and will be damaged much faster than ordinary objects. Of course, because the materials are good, no matter how fast it is, it will not become useless immediately. As long as it is not overloaded in battle, it can be used for at least several decades. Ping. Leda swung the hammer, and the hammer seemed to have self-awareness, guiding him to swing. This was because the computer chip on it controlled the movement of the hammer, and judged that the user's combat power was not enough to fight against the current situation. After a crisis, combat procedures will be initiated on their own. Humph. It's just a borrowed foreign object. Do you think it can really have an effect on the domain master? Break it into pieces. The old territory lord creature snorted coldly from the outside. Even though this hammer-like object had withstood one of his attacks, he still did not believe that external objects alone could smooth out the gap between the novices of the galaxy and the powerful territory lords. Level gap. If it could have this effect, the entire galaxy would have been in chaos long ago. Unfortunately, what he doesn't know is that there may not have been such an item before, but starting from today, this item will officially be included in the strong system. Its appearance represents that in the future, level does not completely mean everything. Maybe one day there will be a weak person holding the strongest treasure, crossing the level to kill the top strong person. Of course, it's too far to go too far now, but the minimum point is that the artifact Leda is holding now really threatens the life of a domain lord. Puff. The hammer and the body of the domain lord creature collided at the seam between subspace and normal space. First there was a slight flicker, and then the world seemed to be turned upside down, setting off waves of waves. And the strange thing is that this hammer can also be strengthened by the power of subspace. The squeezed and deformed subspace has become its helper, brazenly exerting it on the attacking body of this old domain lord creature. At this moment, the old creature's already unsatisfactory domain master's combat power was undoubtedly exposed, and his successors were helplessly rebounded. In this way, this old domain lord creature felt that his facial features had collapsed. Because he never thought that one day he would see a mere elementary creature from the galaxy who could fight with the domain lord. And what's more, the territory lord who became the foil for the primary creatures of the galaxy is still himself. Sir, what is this? The old domain lord is not afraid. After the attack just now, he roughly understands the strength of this elementary creature in the galaxy. Even if he is holding this kind of item, there is still a big gap between him, but the opponent has subspace talent. He wants to. It is also unlikely that the killer will be an enemy holding this hammer. Just try to say a few words, and by the way, let me know what this kind of combat equipment is. It is an item that can bring the fighting power between a primary level galaxy and domain lord level closer. If he does not understand what it is, I am afraid that he will live in fear for the rest of his life and regard every strong person above the galaxy level as if you treat it like a big enemy. It will be very tiring. This is an item lent to me by Your Excellency Yin Yang. You don't deserve to know its specific name. Leda let out a long sigh of relief in the subspace. Just now, he originally wanted to continue to escape, but the iron hammer controlled the direction of his body for a while, and turned into a hard blow with the domain lord. I was so frightened that I almost fainted, but when I found out that I had actually resisted the opponent's attack, I instantly felt more confident. Holding this huge hammer, his combat power can really fight against a domain lord. Even though he is just an extremely weak old domain lord, this ability makes him feel like he is living in a dream. Lord Yin Yang borrowed it. The old domain lord couldn't help but turn his gaze to another battlefield. But he was stunned again soon. Because unknowingly, the battle on another battlefield was not as simple as he thought. I saw that the battle on the other side was completely between you and me. In the subspace, bullet-like objects rushed out of the subspace at a speed similar to the attack speed of the domain lord. Then the young domain lord who came with him hand in hand was a little less confident. In a confrontation, the two sides attacked like bullets shooting at each other. It was almost indistinguishable. Boom 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 boom. Both subspace and normal space were beaten into a hornet's nest, which was unbearable to look at. What kind of two guys made us two great domain lords encounter such a disaster? Your Excellency, let me give you a piece of conscientious advice. Kneel down and beg for mercy now. You still have a chance to live. But if you don't do it, you will definitely die later. This is my advice, otherwise it will be later. You'll understand why. Suddenly, Leda, who had stopped fighting with him for a while, held the terrifying magic weapon given by Jia Yan in one hand in the subspace, while speaking to the old creature standing stunned in the normal space. He is really quite sincere. Because he always felt that the two domain masters still didn't understand what kind of existence he and others were facing. If they continue to fight, they will definitely die. It's not that Leda is more kind-hearted, but he feels that the artifact in his hand will consume its own vitality and durability every time he attacks. If the old domain lord wastes a few more durability, then it is a pity. After all, he understood very well that Jia Yan himself did not need this kind of item to enhance his combat effectiveness. So in the future, whose hands will this terrible magic weapon fall into? The probability of him getting it is very high, so how can he not cherish it? But when these words reached the ears of the old territory lord, he felt as if he had suffered such humiliation, and his whole body was about to explode with anger. You want us to kneel down and beg for mercy? With you two mere weaklings. Ha 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 ha, this is ridiculous. The territory lord has always been the top being in this galaxy, and you want us to kneel down and beg for mercy? What a ridiculous statement. Go. Die. Although the old territory lord is also a person with rich experience, in his experience, there has never been a territory lord bowing to the weak, let alone this unfamiliar elementary creature of the galaxy, and he wants them to kneel down and beg for mercy? Who do these elementary creatures in the galaxy think they are? And does this elementary creature from the galaxy think that he and the two of them will win? Boom. The old creature was furious and struck violently, attacking into the subspace. Well. Leda sighed helplessly, and then once again felt that his body was being aroused by the hammer in his hand, and he could not help but follow the movement of the hammer to resist and counter-attack. Bang. Puff puff bang. The battle here also entered a fierce situation in an instant. In this battle, Leda acted completely according to the instructions of the hammer. Although he was always at a disadvantage, because of his subspace ability and the combat power bonus of the hammer, this battle was the battle, which seemed to have a huge gap in combat power between the two sides, quickly became a draw. The battle here is already attractive enough. But the battle between the yin-yang himself and the domain lord from the outside world was even more jaw-dropping, as if he had seen something impossible. After all, Leda was talking about fighting, but both sides were holding back a little, so it wasn't that exciting. But on the other side, the battle between Jia Yan's avatar and the outside domain lord was really a thrilling fight. Jia Yan is using this clone to engage in a head-on duel with the powerful domain lord from the outside world. Although there is an unprecedentedly huge gap in strength, he used a large number of positive and negative explosives prepared in advance in subspace, which was enough to create a similar head-on confrontation scene. The fighting energy of both sides, as well as the explosives exploded in the subspace, were like ammunition dumps pouring into each other, constantly coming and going, and it was so exciting that it was jaw-dropping. Neither side wanted to let the opponent's attack hit them. The Domain Master creature used its huge strength gap outside the subspace to dodge extremely quickly, while Yin Yang himself used his subspace talent to step on the attack. Using extremely mysterious footwork, he constantly moved within the subspace. It seemed unpleasant, but he could accurately avoid the opponent's attack every time. Damn it! What kind of strength do you have? Outside the subspace, although the Domain Master was able to avoid Jia Yan's attacks, he was not so casual. If he was not careful, he would be hit by a steady stream of positive and negative explosives flying out of the subspace. So he asked in great shock. In fact, even at the moment, he understood that the opponent was using some unique reserved method to attack, but what was even clearer was that no matter what method he used, this self-proclaimed yin-yang creature definitely had good combat effectiveness. You can tell from its exquisite movements and its method of using minimum energy to do maximum things. That's why he asked what kind of strength this yin-yang was. But his question did not receive a response from the yin and yang inside. Jia Yan has been in a head-on confrontation with the domain lord from the outside world. Although he is more impressive, he can control a clone with actual combat power, which may reach a star close to the galactic level to fight the domain lord. This pressure is not small. So he didn't even bother to answer this guy's questions. In the world of the strong, the principle of everything is strength. With strength, whatever you say and do, it is an iron law. As for Jia Yan's clone, it was not enough to deal with the domain lord, so he was very tired. Leda over there used the magic weapon I made to fight, and the effect was really good. It seems that if I can make some such items for my clone in the future, maybe my clone will truly become able to compete with more powerful clones. Fighting with weak domain lords. The clone's lack of energy does not mean that his real body is also low on energy. After all, Jia Yan once could control hundreds of clones to fight in various places. His multitasking ability was far from the limit. So his real body, while controlling the clone to fight, was also observing Leda's side. Wherever there is a problem, the real body will not be stingy with its energy. If it moves a little, the battle in the outside world may be over. But at least it seems that he doesn't need to do anything with his real body at the moment. Set a small goal first, such as remembering in 1 second, Shikiju mobile version reading website. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2456. Jia Yan is observing the battle, especially the effect of Leda's magic weapon, and feels pretty good so far. Except for Leda, no one knows that there is such a real great god deeper in the subspace. As for the Yin-Yang sect members who retreated far away, this was even more so. They had already been deeply frightened by the shocking battle scene in front of them, and no one could speak. Territory Lord level energy exploded in space, and the whole world seemed to be about to end. If there was a planet next to the two battlefields, it would probably be bombed to pieces. Is this a battle at the Domain Lord level? It's terrible, it's terrible. But, our master, he can actually, be able to fight against the Territory Lord. This. Even Mr. Leda can do it? Isn't he a beginner in the galaxy? Maybe we really don't understand the battle at that level. Maybe Mr. Leda and Master are both Domain Masters. But I can't see, it doesn't look like it. They couldn't understand the feeling of the current battle at all. High end is high end, but the high end period makes them feel quite weird. Because of the fighting power of both sides, at least based on what you can see with your eyes, it seems, it should be that my master and Lord Leda were completely defeated, but why? I can't understand, maybe this is the huge gap between them and the strong. Weak people can't understand the fighting power of Yin Yang and Leda, but the two Domain Lords fighting Jia Yan and the others are high-end enough, right? They can't understand it either. Can you still hide? The old Domain Master attacked again, but after being avoided by the elementary creatures of the galaxy in the subspace, he was already in a state of confusion. He couldn't even imagine how a galaxy novice could perform better and better in battles. What was even more confusing to him was that the galaxy novice himself seemed a little surprised by his own performance. This magical weapon is invincible. Leda was inside the subspace, feeling his body being attracted by the hammer-like magic weapon and making evasive movements. His self-confidence was getting stronger and stronger. Even though he was still at a disadvantage, he was no longer as panicked as before. He determined that if this battle continues, not only will he not be killed or injured, but he will also accumulate a lot of first-hand experience and information on Domain Lord level battles. You must know that the opportunity for Jia Yan to advance to a stronger level was to fight against strong men, especially the battle with the ordinary Galaxy Intermediate peak when he was in the Galaxy Intermediate rank, which made him more determined on the road to the Galaxy Intermediate rank peak, and Leda has just reached the first level of the galaxy, and he actually has the opportunity to fight head-on with a real Domain Lord. During this period, every move is nourishment for his future growth. In other words, this battle may be a huge opportunity for Leda's future growth, and may be an important milestone on his way to becoming a truly strong man. Boom. On the other side, the young Territory Lord who had a head-on confrontation with Yin Yang was even more doubtful about life. Different from the battle between Leda and the Kanglao domain, this domain master fought Yin Yang head-on. The Yin Yang did not show the slightest feeling of being at a disadvantage, but was engaged in a direct battle with him across the subspace. Damn it! What the hell is this guy? Why does he dodge my attacks every time even though he doesn't dodge them unexpectedly? This Territory Lord really couldn't understand why he was fighting like this with an existence that didn't even look like a galaxy level. Obviously his strength should have a huge advantage, but under the bombardment of the opponent's explosive meteorites rushing out from the subspace, he became quite embarrassed, and it was extremely difficult to fight. The situation between the two sides, at least on the surface, looks like a draw. And even if you don't look at it from the surface, from a deeper inside view, it seems, it's a draw. He is almost autistic. But even if you are autistic, you still have to fight the battle in front of you. In the subspace, Jia Yan was the old god, calmly controlling his clone and fighting with the opponent. And he's a bit of a scumbag. In fact, the energy of his clone is really not very big. It is a bit difficult to control so many explosives in one go. Moreover, the real body is not far away from the depths of subspace. With such a good power, what else is there to do without using it? It's a bit silly to transport energy from the real body to the clone, and then the clone uses them to control explosives. So Jia Yan simply and neatly let his real body carry the energy level similar to that of his clone, controlled the explosives, and slowly moved the explosives at a speed that was so slow to him that he wanted to yawn. And then shoot out of subspace. So the reason for being serious and slowly letting the other person feel the pressure is very, very simple. That is, the existence that this territory lord is actually facing is gradually no longer the yin-yang in front of him, but a senior territory lord whose strength is far superior to him. Only if he can win. Jia Yan looked at the thrilling battles that others saw now, and it became a bit boring. After all, with his strength, he went to the edge of the Milky Way center to fight ordinary domain lords. Although it was a bit challenging to use a clone, it was still not so exciting. He yawned and was so bored that he exploded. Go to hell. The young domain lord from the outside world once again used his trump card. That's right, up to now, this domain lord no longer cares whether he is bullying the small with his own strength. He uses whatever moves he has and uses his trump card. No exceptions. His trump card is some kind of physical attack method, but this method also has some weird brainwave power, which may be difficult for ordinary strong people to defend against. But when the attack enters the subspace, the power of this killer weapon has weakened a lot, and then it will be easily offset by Jia Yan using an explosive with yin and yang energy, both of which collide. After a few more strikes, Jia Yan suddenly and strangely controlled his clone and stopped fighting. Two friends, now you know that the gap in strength between us is not as big as you imagined, right? Now I will give you one last chance. If you regret it now and don't want to continue to be enemies with us, then quickly retreat, it's still too late. Huh. After he said such words, not only the two domain lords, but also Leda was startled. The three of them stopped their fighting moves involuntarily. After fighting until now, they all understand that they can't win for a while. Although overall, Jia Yan and the others have been at a slight disadvantage since they hid in the subspace, but the problem is that they are in the subspace and have the convenience of home field, so it is easier to evade. Even if they are attacking, a large amount of shallow space has been broken, but the two subspace ability users can retreat to other directions. In other words, if the fight continues like this, it will definitely be endless. So at least the battle will not be decided in a short period of time. The bigger problem is the meaning revealed in the words yin-yang. That's when he started threatening. Threaten us. Such a meaning flashed in the minds of the two domain lords, and deep down in their hearts, they no longer sneered, but treated it with extreme caution. After all, these two treacherous weaklings, in this battle, actually let them see the ability to fight against the domain lord level. So judging from the combat power they have shown, there is no way to hurt both of them. A glimmer of opportunity. After all, everyone has a trump card. Since they have the ability to fight against the territory lord, it is also possible to have a trump card similar to that of the territory lord. The two domain masters thought so, but Leda on one side was sweating profusely and inadvertently looked at the depths of the subspace behind him. There was a terrifying huge shadow that he could only feel, staring at him with eagerness. I'm afraid Master Jia Yan doesn't want to play this kind of weak game. He understood that if Yin Yang had any means to end the battle in an instant, then only Jia Yan's true form would take action. After all, the clone is still a clone, and the trump card cannot be used, and in fact the combat power of the clone is not that strong. At least Leighton knows that at least half of the combat power used by Jia Yan's clone comes from the support of Jia Yan's real body. So if he wanted to end the battle, he could only use his true form. And I am afraid that after using it, among all the creatures present, except for the two domain lords who were personally dealt with by Lord Jia Yan, who can detect Jia Yan's true form, no one else will be able to detect his true form. After all, the terror of the senior domain lord is enough to support him to do this kind of action. By then, the two major domain lords are dead, and there is no way to tell others. In other words, even if they take action, it will be like Yin Yang himself doing it, making Yin Yang's reputation continue to grow. So Leda's eyes also became lazy, because he knew that no matter what the other party's answer was, he would no longer have to continue to face the huge pressure and fight a domain lord head-on. This battle will be an amazing benefit for him for a long time in the future. Fighting more will be useless. The two domain lords obviously also sensed that Yin Yang and Leda seemed to have given up the fight. In other words, when Yin and Yang gave the above ultimatum, it was as if they were both sure that they would win. How can it be? Territory lord creatures are strong and fierce-tempered, but when the enemy's combat power is similar to your level, they will become hesitant. Especially when it comes to their own safety, every domain lord will be very careful, even Jia Yan. So after Yin Yang finished speaking, the two territory lords looked at each other, and then the old territory lord seemed to have a silent exchange with the young territory lord. Even Jia Yan couldn't hear the brainwave power conversation between the domain masters. But he just needs to know the outcome. After talking for a while, the two domain masters stared at the subspace where Yin Yang and Leda entered with great vigilance, and then gradually approached together. To your excellencies, your strength is quite impressive. We admit that we are a little bit arrogant when it comes to coming here this time. Why don't we just leave it like this? We will hand over certain interests of the Peace Star territory to the Yin Yang section in the future, the wells will not be violated. How? The two domain lords were actually threatened by Jia Yan's words and really stopped fighting. Leda was quite surprised by this, let alone the Yin Yang sect members who had been observing the battle from a distance. So the domain lord can be so cowardly? But what was surprising to them was normal to Jia Yan. He looked at the whole thing from a superior perspective. Of course, the perspective was different. At least he thought the situation was very common, because he had faced too many territory lords who were greedy for life and afraid of death. Especially the territory lords on the edge of the galaxy's central star territory. Judging from Jia Yan's understanding, they actually know in their hearts that they can get greater opportunities by entering the depths of the galaxy's central star territory, but they dare not, or have various reasons. Reasons restrict them, preventing them from taking that step, and such territory lords are generally more greedy and afraid of death than territory lords deep in the central star field of the galaxy, and are more likely to give in. Therefore, it is completely normal to encounter such a domain lord. Oh, you two know the current affairs and are talented people. Well, since you two are so knowledgeable, I will let you see something interesting. The yin and yang of Jia Yan's clone looked at the two creatures calmly, and then sneered. Yin, yin, yin. After hearing these words, the two territory lords suddenly felt their ears scream with alarming sound. The people in the yin-yang sect in the distance did not feel the sound at all, as if the sound was ringing in their ears. After that, the two domain masters felt that their whole bodies were immersed in pressure like the pressure of deep-sea water. In less than a short moment, they actually felt like they were suffocating. What kind of power is this? The two territory lords have probably never come into contact with similar terrifying powerful men in their lives. www.zhaozhuyuan.com, they feel that their whole bodies are no longer under their control, and it is very difficult to move their fingers. But no matter how difficult it was, they were still domain masters, so after a period of fear, they finally raised their heads together and looked into the distant depths of subspace. I saw that a shocking and terrifying super-large building gradually appeared in a place that was empty just now and was blocked by some unique force. What exactly is this? This power, what exactly is? The oversized building appeared for a moment as if shrouded in a layer of fog, and then gradually disappeared again. They only noticed that there was a force completely beyond their imagination surging inside the building, as if with a casual blow, you can kill them. When the building completely disappeared, the two domain lords felt that the terrifying pressure around them had completely dropped, and finally gradually returned to their normal state. This, Lord Yin Yang, what exactly is this? Until now, the two domain masters still don't know whether the energy deep in the subspace is emitted by the building itself or whether it is released by a strong person. They are always confused. Set a small goal first, such as remembering in 1 second, Shikiju mobile version reading website.